Yeah, yeah, sure. And I think we are live now. I think that's it.
Oh.
Welcome. Oh wait, no, I don't think so. We have
no,
zero eyes.
We're live, it says here, but it just takes a minute for it to come up on the
That's
stream. Is like in arrears.
Pretend Ryan said something really funny and we all laugh.
Casual intro. There we go. That's great. So, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into this live. This is a live chat. This was actually Josh's idea to do this, and I thought it was a really good idea to have indie legend Ryan Cahill on and kind of
such a weird thing to say.
grill him for as long as he's willing to put up with us for all his indie knowledge. So why don't we start by introducing? We'll start going that way with you, Scott.
Yeah, so I'm Scott Palmer. I'm the author of the Last Ballad series. A Memory of Song came out last May. A Chorus of War, the sequel, is coming out this June 17th. And you can find the novella free if you sign up for my mailing list in my bio and everywhere else and all that good stuff.
Ooh. Josh?
Oh, me next. Sorry.
That was real awkward silence for a minute.
My bad.
It's because we don't know which direction we're meant to go.
That's right. That's right.
It's the Australia time zone thing again.
Yeah, Australia's up
we're living in the future, man. We're living in the future. It's great. It's good here. I'm Josh Walker. I'm the author of the Song of the Sleepers series. So these are my 3 books. Book 1's An Exile of Water and Gold, and I'm very happy to be here chatting with Mr. Ryan Cahill. Sam next, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sam Paisley. I'm the author of the Elements of Time series. Book 1 is currently out. The reason this is the cover. Beautiful.
He does it every time. And never
First thing, Sam, preparation is everything.
I that roll. There's a lot of junk behind me. It was a well executed roll. No, the reason I have that up is because there's like 300 Kickstarter fulfillment books behind me, so it's an absolute mess. Oh, there you go. And I am finally able to get to fulfillment. But yeah, so the Elements of Time series, book 1, and the novella Patches and Drills are both out for anyone who's interested. And for anyone who's on the stream is looking for their Kickstarter, I promise they are coming soon. I've finally gotten them in.
Well, skip over me. We'll go to Louise.
Oh, no, I was waiting for Ryan. I was waiting for you to go, man.
I said, well, skip over. You know,
I am Louise Holland. I am the author of Spark of the Divine, the Calorat Chronicles, which is a real-life D&D campaign that I turned into a novel series. And I'm still really bad at talking about myself, even though we've been doing this for 2 years now. So that's why I joined a writing group called The Break-Ins, which includes 5 of these lovely people. And hopefully, Ryan, if we could bully him into joining the Discord, that would be really cool.
That's right, yeah. So Louise is clearly our segue woman, and she's the best at you. She's kind of started.
It's because I'm really good at deflecting attention.
Yeah, so essentially, Ryan, we're a group of authors that got together. We were all publishing our books at the same time, and we decided that a group of us would be better served bouncing information off each other. The very first thing that came up when we were started to talk, John and I realized that it was very hard to talk about indie publishing at all without saying the name Ryan Cahill. And so it was kind of a joke at the beginning of our Discord that we were like, we need to make a Ryan Cahill drinking game. So every time we say his name, we have to drink. And of course, a joke. But the sentiment is there is that you have made such an impact in indie publishing that the people coming after you in this game, it's very hard to even discuss publishing without bringing up your name. And that's why we wanted to, get together and just ask you a few questions, for beginning writers and also for writers who are a little bit further along, right?
Although it really is, it's funny for me. I was only talking to my wife inside. Like, this is book 4 comes out in like 2 days, and because we're in the future, 29th here. And it's so weird for me to even hear this be mentioned like this in any way, shape, or form. Because 4 years ago, I was working in a lab. So it's a big weird difference. I think it's one thing, no matter how many books you write, and I've talked to a lot of people who've written a lot more books than me, and no matter how far you get and what you do, you're still always second guessing what's going on. So, inside your own sphere, you're sitting there like, hope I don't fuck this up. You know, you're like 4 years in, 7 books in, you're like, I hope I don't fuck this up with the next book. And that's a never ending thing.
Yeah, there's always unforeseen costs, right? Like you could never have obviously seen. It's hard to look outside of what you're actually in. Like it's there's so many things happening outside of just what you're focused on, which again is what brings us. Like we want to know different things about how you stay focused, how you approach the gauntlet of publishing. But we have.
I'm not laughing at you, by the way.
Together, so I'll give it back to Andrew here and let him take the lead.
No, that's
Sweet.
good.
Hit me with shit, not physical stuff, verbal.
I thought a really good place to start was actually with Josh had a really good question about an article that you wrote back in 2001. So I'll let Josh.
The Self-Publishing Monthly article?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
That became kind of a publishing shrine, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that article was one of the ways that Scott and I first kind of bonded and started figuring out that talking together was the way to do this. But yeah, I mean, something I've been thinking about, given how far you've come, was that article and the way that indie kind of changes so quickly.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that you kind of could revise from that article for 2025, what would you say? You
see, it's hard because it's a funny one. It's really nice that article actually did something for anyone, because I wrote that when I was sitting in the quarantine rooms for 2 weeks after moving to New Zealand. Just me and my wife quarantined in this tiny little room for 2 weeks. And I was writing this article and she was like, you have not stopped on that. And I think it was like 7,000 words in total for the article. And I was asked what I contribute, and I did that one. And there was something for me about, I was like, look, I've spent a lot of time researching this and there's a lot of shit out there. So for the minute at least, I want to try and put together things that I know have worked and methods that I know have worked. And a lot of it for me, though, is behavioral. So there's some pieces of advice in there about, you know, what mailing services to use if you set up websites and things. Like, I know for me, website wise now, like I like what I have, but I would start, or might even end up moving to something more like Shopify or Wix, solely for how simple they are. Because with WordPress at the minute, when I want to make changes, it's really fucking slow.
Yeah,
it's really good and really diverse and really flexible, but it's really fucking slow. But but a lot of the stuff, it's behavioral, and I think it's a place where I think a lot of new authors really suffer. Is how to carry themselves when they're talking in the public domain, how to interact with people, and even from the concept of, there's so many indie authors I see with like covers and stuff, and I'm in behavioral as well. It's the concept of your ability to assess the professionalism of something next to something else. So like a lot of indie authors get a cover and they pay $2,000 or $3,000. Not everyone pays $2,000 or $3,000, but like really expensive covers. I'm using kind of like a hyperbolic example, like really expensive covers. And then the corner will be cut and they'll slap on the typography themselves. And so sometimes what that can do is you're almost killing your first investment, because the two levels of professionalism need to match. And that can be a problem. I've seen some amazing cover art that amazing art that doesn't work as a cover art because of maybe that reason or something. So like for me, there's not a lot I change. I'm sure if I went back and looked through it, there's like small things like advice on pricing and advice on where I'd go for certain services. But behaviorally, it's still kind of the same. Like there's nothing that will ever guarantee you success ever in any field, anywhere in the world. It's just about trying to do your best. But I think with the indie field in particular, a huge part of it's not about what will give you success, it's about giving yourself the opportunity to have that success or to grasp it if you get a bit of luck, and having that understanding of how you should carry yourself, how you should interact with people, the level of professionalism things need to be. Because as indies, we're always fighting this you're not trad. Like even only like 4 days ago, someone posted something. There's a Facebook group called Fantasy Faction, and I used to get loads of good reviews in there, and I still do. But every time one comes up, someone else will come in and just try to trash the book or something. And I was like, look, you know what? I just don't have time for it right now. So I just left the group. And then someone else sent one the other day, and it was saying, oh, there's a reason this was indie published. And I don't actually care about that anymore. Like, I think you have to develop a thick skin at this stage, but it's indicative of the problem that we face and why we have to carry ourselves in a different way, because we need to constantly prove that our books are good just by who we are. How you carry it, how you portray yourself is the first touchstone for someone to let themselves go into your book, especially someone in a book community who is more exposed to what indie means. Because before this, I didn't know what an indie published book was. I just knew there were books. I didn't care about publishers. And that's the other part of it, is for those readers who don't know what indie publishing is, you need to create as little friction as humanly possible. They need to pass over your page on Amazon and see no difference, because they don't know what a difference is. They don't know what indie publish is. They don't know what trad publish is, but they do know when something's different. So if they go over and they look across a page and the cover's off and the blurb isn't well written and maybe you don't have all the formats, stuff they're used to seeing, then it triggers a small thing in the brain to be like, don't know about this one. And then they move on. So it's like there's two parts of it. There's people who are actively aware of the indie world and people who aren't aware of the indie world. But how you carry yourself faces both of them. That's a real answer.
Talking about reviews in particular, do you have some sort of practice for checking reviews? Do you just ignore all reviews? Do you do you dip into occasionally and just kind of have like more of a broad overview, or do you have like a practice?
If someone takes the time to tag me in a review and it's a 5-star review, and the only reason I'm saying 5 stars is because the reality here is unless a book is just coming out, I don't have the mental bandwidth to look at anything that isn't a 5-star. Mostly because what a lot of people don't realize is when you have the reviewing circle, I talk about this with Patrick, is I feel like the whole book community and BookTube and the book reviewing community has created a weird environment sometimes. And it can separate what you're reviewing from the human that created the review. And sometimes people can forget, oh, it was a great review. I gave you 4 stars. I'm really happy. I'm really thankful that you reviewed that book. I can't read it though, because the way my brain works when I'm trying to write creatively is that if I see one negative thing, I'll just fixate on it for the rest of the day and I won't be able to write. And the reality is I can't afford to lose writing time. So it's not that I don't appreciate the review, and I love the fact that you took the time to give a review, and thank you for giving a 4-star review, and I'm so happy you enjoyed the book. But my brain, it's negativity bias. It's the same way if you walk through the street and 5 people tell you look fantastic and one person tells you look fat, you'll be on a treadmill for a week. Like that's the way most human brains work, not all of them. But for me, like I do not look at reviews for my first book at all. I don't go near them. Positive or negative, unless someone specifically is tagging me in a positive one and they're like, they want me to read it. They've taken the time to write the review, so I'm going to take the time to read the review. But in general, as a rule, I don't, mostly because it's my first ever book. I'm the most sensitive about it. There's obviously plenty of craft elements that I've improved on, so of course I could go back and make it better, but I don't want to. I like the journey. But in general, I just don't look at negative reviews. There's just no reason. I think some people get fixated on how you can improve from a negative this and a negative that. And I was like, honestly, no. Like for me, it's not worth it. I'm going to learn from my editor. I'm going to learn from the beta readers who I have selected to come and tell me these things. Because you can learn more that way, because one person's opinion is always just one person's opinion. That's it. It's one person's opinion, but you will fixate on the negative. So for me, having the beta readers, I use like a Google Doc. It's more like I check what I wanted to improve on versus what I'm getting. So if I am hoping to elicit a particular reaction from someone at a certain point for whatever reason, I'll find out if I'm doing that through my beta readers, because they're going to leave inline comments and I'm going to see how it goes, and then I can learn that way. But for me, no. It's a messy spiral in a very delicate creative game that can just completely throw you off. And at the end of the day, writing is so much more important than just going through those reviews. You've got to take steps to protect your mental space, right? Actually, that's a great segue. 100%. The question you said everything I said in like 5 seconds. It's a great question. Segue into that. I actually had a question for you similar to that, Ryan. Is when you started, like as you mentioned, when you started, and like a lot of us were there with you when you started, like buying those early editions of A Blood and Fire and watching your journey. So we're testament to how far you've come. So I'm sure that there was a lot of unforeseen things that have arisen during this time, especially like in regards to scaling as a business, because a lot of people don't realize, I think, especially readers, that when you're an indie, separating from tradition, you're doing absolutely everything. You're wearing every hat from
scheduling and managing ads to shipping logistics and all that stuff. So basically what I'm wondering is, for people who might be a little bit farther along in their journey, when you started to scale your business, were there any mistakes you made early on? Anything that you would do differently to kind of...
Yeah, I fucking hand painted 50 tiny novellas, which was a pain in the hole. No, I think for me, with this, the same way to approach it is the same way I think you should approach everything. The same way you should approach indie publishing or any publishing at all. You need to ask yourself what your goals are. What do you want? What's important? What do you want to achieve? And so for me, like writing, I wanted to write. I wanted to release books. So I didn't scale the traditional way. So I could have started stocking all the books, which I started doing at a really small scale, stocking some books and signing and sending them out. And I was doing that at a very small scale. And as soon as it looked like it was going up, that's when I started talking with the Broken Binding. And I was like, look, I will take a much smaller cut of these books. You stock them, you list them, you wrap them, you ship them. Yeah. I don't want to spend the time doing it. I spent like a week doing it. And I was like, no, this is taking way too much time out of what I'm doing. Way too much time out of my writing. And at the end of the day, what I enjoy, what I'm here for is writing. And that's what I want. There's other people who could say, no, what I want is bank. I want bank now. And sometimes that is more important than bank in the future. So I want it now. So I'm going to take the majority of the money. I'm going to do the legwork. I might get a family member in to help. For me at that time, I wanted to write. So that's what I did when it came to scaling. And then really similar with the audiobooks, I was like, look, at the minute, I don't have the cash for doing my own audiobooks. These deals aren't amazing, but I want to have all formats on my Amazon page. So as things grew and as things expanded, I'm not great at handing the reins off to people. Like I was doing all my own formatting, InDesign. I learned InDesign. It took like 3 days and slept for like 2 hours for 3 days. Until eventually I got to this stage now and I'm going, do you know what? Even at that, I'm still crap at it. Like compared to someone who's a professional, I'm still crap at it. And then I got to a stage where I have to go and gauge my own time. What's my time worth? And so it was taking me 2 weeks to format a 400,000 word book because I was going line by line trying to get rid of hyphens because I'm a fucking obsessive bastard. And I had to realize that and go, you know what is that time worth? And even not even work time compared to how little time I get to spend with my family because I work so much. So can I take those 2 weeks to spend with my family and then I'll pay someone to do this? And so it is about learning when you've reached a point that outsourcing is good and what you should outsource. So I will never outsource social media. I'll never outsource writing my emails because those personal interactions, honestly, I feel are a major part of this whole community and the fantasy community in particular, because the whole aspect of it, there's just so much more passion and love in all fantasy areas than there is in a lot of other genres like thriller and stuff, because there's something about the escapism and the whole third world and being consumed by it. And there's so much more in it, and the readers are so passionate that I want to make sure that the interactions are genuine. So I won't outsource those ever. But for me, it was about learning when to hyphen him down. I'm not even looking at the comments. I looked at the comments and I got confused in like 5 seconds.
I'll go with that. Although I will say, one time when I was using InDesign, it was like for an early version just so I could see it, and I brought it into InDesign, and I had like single lines that were just all in italics, and it didn't figure out that that's where the italics stopped. So then just randomly I had entire paragraphs in italics. I was like, oh no. So I had to go through the entire book, and I was like, this is the worst thing ever, and I hate it.
That's what it is. And it's about learning. It could take 4 hours to learn how to fix that, and then the next time it's 2 seconds. But every time there was a fucking issue, it was 4 hours. Something would go wrong. I was like, oh my god, I fucked up on page 3. And it was just I think because there are others. There's others I'd say to talk to for stuff like that. Like Tao Wong is incredible when it comes to how much he does with the expansion and scope of his business. And like I would consider myself to be quite business-like in how I understand my career and what I want to do with it and how best to facilitate my needs. But with regards to actual business infrastructure, I have tried at the most for the hands-on things to try and outsource them so that I can spend my practical time writing. And then maybe in the future, I will pull some of that back. and how many unread emails don't even, like, Jesus Christ. It is legitimately, there's something about like 1,500.
Oh my gosh.
And it's fucking insane. And my task now in my free time is to go back through them because I've had no time.
Do you have the notifications on? Is the little red dot, does it say 1,500? Because
it was more than that. Let me just double check. Actually, currently on my mailbox it says 29,000, but that's including all promotion, all other crap that isn't actually an email. But if I filter, it's 1,635.
Close.
See, I'd just make a new email and then pretend that I never saw them.
It's like on fire.
Right, these are actual reader emails, so I have to go back.
Was there one day when you were just like, I'm cutting out social media and emails to focus? One day when you were just hit a point.
Social media is easier because it can be like instinctive, immediate responses. But like with some of the emails you get are really in depth and they're really long and they take a while to get back to. And I've just had to, with the emails, there was a point where I went, this book needs to get written, right? Because there's a lot going on. The baby's due in January. There's so many things going on. I need to write this book. And I used to go to the emails for an hour every day, and then I was just between, like, if I need to walk the dog, it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours because she's a crazy psychotic wolf. If I want to do exercise and go to the gym, it's going to be an hour to an hour and a half. And if I want to cook food, and eventually I realized before I did anything functional in the day, there's like 6 hours gone. And so I was like, I can't spend the time on the emails right now. I need to get ahead of myself before I start, drowning myself.
There's a question a bit earlier, Andrew, I don't know if you can find it.
Is it this one?
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay, hovering over, just waiting.
So I want to add to that question as well, in terms of something you mentioned before, in terms of beta reading. I think a lot of, especially new authors, but frankly, I would imagine everyone who's ever written anything, whenever they get feedback, it's always, okay, do I completely ignore this? Do I incorporate it? And you mentioned a little bit about how kind of you go about looking for it, but yeah, tell us a bit more about that. Like when you're in the drafting process, when you're looking for feedback or you get feedback, how do you incorporate it? How do you look at it?
Yeah, so this is actually a really, really good question. It's something that I face every single time. But genuinely a really good question because it can be hard to understand what you do. Like for me, I use a beta team of about 30 beta readers. All right. And I do it for a solid reason because I believe that a cross section of opinions is more important than a single strong opinion. And so when I go and I do my beta reads, the main thing you have to get, all right, is you need to have confidence in yourself. All right. And that's one of the hardest things for any writer to have. But it's not about having confidence in, oh, I'm an amazing writer, I'm the next token. It's about having confidence in what you're trying to do. All right. So, and then understanding every time. So basically I'm going to go in random directions if I keep going that way. But basically I'll have my beta reads. I've got my beta readers to leave inline comments. And so what I'll do is if I see multiple 5 or 6 people kind of agreeing on the same point, I will mark that point and I'll leave those comments together. All right. And then I go, okay, this is something to look at. Whether I believe it is or not, there's something here. And it's the concept that the other one is I'll ask people to like react. Okay. But if someone tells me how to fix it, I just delete the comment. All right. And I don't even read it. I just delete the comment. If someone tells you something is wrong, it's probably wrong. If they tell you how to fix it, they're probably wrong. And it's not the fact that what they're saying won't work. It's the fact that it's not what you are going to do. And maybe there's 1 or 2 people that like I've seen how they think and how they work, and I go, do you know what? Usually some of this stuff is kind of along the lines of how I like to function, so it might work. But a lot of the time, if someone tells me how to fix it, unless they're an editor, I will just get rid of it, because there's too many chefs in my kitchen in my head right now, and I'll just get rid of it. So I'll do that, and then if one person is saying something, I will look at it, right? And if it's just one person, most of the time I'll kind of ignore it, but I will read it. And if I read it and I go, do you know what? They're making a really strong point, I'll leave that in as well. Right. So it's about having that confidence. And like I've had instances where I have beta readers who, I think the important thing is I have beta readers who, if I only had that one beta, my whole book would be different. All right. And that's why the cross section is important. I've had beta readers who, if it was up to them, my book would have been entirely different. There's whole storylines they hated that ends up being some people's most favorite storylines in the whole thing. And that happens, and you learn that as you go. Like when I go back and I wrote a Blood and Fire compared to a Darkness and Light is night and day. And then a Darkness and Light and a Born Ruin, because I'm getting better at my craft, because I'm pushing myself to learn, and I'm picking things that I want to get better at. Like each time I want to, like when I'm moving from Blood and Fire to Darkness and Light, I use the Fall to learn strength of narrative perspective from different characters and try to use that to apply it to Darkness and Light, and then try to learn more things and move on. But for the feedback and incorporating it from readers, I think that's important. The main thing is about understanding who you're talking to, right? So what that reader is, what their background is, what they might want, what the context is, because sometimes as well, just people in their life might be experiencing something that makes them feel a certain way, and they might want you to change something. And what they're saying might not be wrong, but it could be wrong for your story. So it's about understanding the confidence in yourself, where the comment that person's coming from, and then, also a cross-section of opinion. That's how it works for me. Everyone might be different, but I do that, and then I do a full line edit from a professional line editor, and then I do a proofread. I just think they're all important, but the developmental stage, I prefer to have it from my brain, and then a cross-section of opinion from readers who are in the fantasy genre, and preferably readers who are in, well, not preferably, absolutely for me, who are in my series. So it's from my readers, so people who I know I'm writing for is really important. And it's like you get comments on blurbs when you're starting out, and it's hard to understand that you don't want comments on blurbs. You want comments on blurbs from people who read epic fantasy, because there's a difference. An epic fantasy blurb is written very differently than a standard blurb. But yeah.
Okay, so to summarize that, cross-section of readers, get multiple people. If you see the same comment multiple times, that's when you take a look. Otherwise,
it's about like being confident in yourself, but also like anytime you think there could be merit, save the comment. Anytime you think there could be merit, stick it aside for later. Don't always address it now. Leave, come back when your brain is settled, because sometimes as well, as a writer, like you might bounce off something, someone will say something, no, that's not true, this is a great passage, and leave, come back the next day, and you'll be like, okay, no, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. Like, yeah, that separation in time can be really important too.
So for your beta readers, are you using like Google Docs? So can they all see the exact same file? Can they see each other's comments?
I take the time to set up like 30 separate files.
Okay, because I was going to ask, because it was one of the things that I thought when I was setting mine up, because I thought I don't want them seeing each other, because I didn't want, confirmation bias of someone reading it and going, oh, that's a good point.
And that is what happens. And like I've had one, I think I have some beta readers in the chat here, and it was really funny because there was a point where I actually went to one of them. I was like, are you guys talking to each other? Like, oh, what do you mean? Not really. Like, I can literally see the same comments at the same time, like literally almost word for word comments. And you guys are bringing up points that nobody else brought up, which usually means like, if I would normally see those cross sections, I'd go, oh, I need to look at this. But other times now I realize it's actually just one opinion where someone like cycles on it and is like, oh my God, I think it's Ariana's in the chat there, and she got obsessed with a helmet. Okay. And all of a sudden I was getting 2 or 3 people being like, there you go, you have, and all of a sudden you're getting like 2 or 3 people being like, where's his helmet? Does he have a helmet? I didn't think he had a helmet. I'm like but then I have to delete like fucking 15 comments from the combined beta doc afterwards. So I have 30 separate Word docs, Google Docs, and then I go download them all, and then I combine them into one single Word doc, so the comments all overlay at the right points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's time intensive. But it allows for a much better opinion. It's like, I love when readers talk to each other, but when I'm trying to get I need confirmation about the helmets. When I'm trying to get a really honest cross section, the problem is one person's opinion can so easily paint the other people's opinion, and that can really affect how your book comes out. And especially, like I said, that negativity bias. Like if you're reading this and 25 people in your beta team love it and one person hates it, you're going to fixate on the person who hates it. Like so easily fixate on that. And that's where that confidence in what you're trying to write comes in. Having that confidence in yourself, which I didn't have when I started, and it took a while.
And I think for any, you should have confidence. If you don't have confidence, then the rest of us are.
Oh no, I was responding to that you combined 30 docs, not 30
I think also for a lot of kind of new writers out there, people who are just entering the game. Something that's really important that you said that I made sure I did when I was getting feedback as well is get people who actually like to read what you're writing. Like if you're writing epic fantasy and you give it to a bunch of like thriller readers who only read like Tom Clancy or Jack Reacher books, they're just not going to get it. And it's going to make the feedback a lot harder to actually understand.
I when I started out with Blood and Fire, I got 20, I think it was 24 beta readers from like the fantasy beta reader Facebook groups and stuff. 2 of them finished the book. Like I think everyone just ghosted it, and mostly at the start, like just didn't even read the book. And now I have people clambering to get on the team, and that's the difference. And I think sometimes, you know, as well as an indie, when you start out and you look at someone who has already carved a bit of a path for a few years, it's easy to go, well, that's easy for you to say because when you do this, all these things happen. I was like, no, I was there too. Like, you know, I started out, I had like 24 people, and I had like everyone but 2, and just like 3 just ghost me. Like it happens. It's a horrible experience, and I think most people go through it. Most people see it, but that's really important. Making sure that these people are people who read these books, because why else would you be getting the feedback? What's, you know, I'm not going to ask a vegetarian which is the best place to buy steak.
Good point.
And they're not going to ask me where the best couscous is. Like,
did you put those 22 people into the book and make them die? Because
no, but what I did do, and I'm not going to confirm which character, I got one reader who was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are you describing this character? It's so in-depth. They're clearly never going to appear again. So that has become a recurring major character.
It's like that meme that's when it's like Michael Scott and it's like, stop describing the trees, and then he's Tolkien. It's like, oh, I'm going to describe them even harder now.
Yeah.
Spite. Yeah. Nothing works like spite. I love it.
Yeah, spite.
So you have about 30 people on your beta reader team. There's a later question, but we'll just jump to it. For your ARC reader team, do you have like a cap for that? Do you have a rough number you aim for, or do you just
it's the first advice that I give to anyone. There's no reason for any cap on your ARC team. Anyone who thinks there is just making something up in their head. There's absolutely no reason. Will White sells over 1 million books a year. You are not cannibalizing your readership. If you think you're cannibalizing your readership, you're selling yourself short. There is no way. It's not possible. Like, there's hundreds of millions of readers there. A lot of them with huge cross sections, like even like with Romantasy and the way that's come through now, like I've gained a huge swath of particularly a female readership who up to this point maybe didn't read a lot of fantasy. They crossed over from romance into Romantasy. Then they realized that yes, they love romance, but they also are really liking the fantasy side of things, and have started to filter into fantasy. Readers who are very new to fantasy, and readers I never thought I could have because they didn't read the genre at the start. And I think like that's it, and that's a separate topic where you can sit there and rally against Fourth Wing because Fourth Wing and sexy dragons, or you can go, hey, this is a great thing for the fantasy genre, and we now have more people reading books. But I have no limit. Like, honestly, the only reason mine is stopped with new people now is because I couldn't keep up with the emails. I had it at the end of my email chain. Basically, I have a welcome sequence on my emails, and on the last email, it's like, hey, would you like a chance to be an advanced reader? And I was getting people in on that, but I was not keeping up with it, and it was filling the inbox up way too fast. So I had to stop that. I have about 600 on it now. But like I wouldn't cap it. There's no reason to cap it. Absolutely none. It costs you nothing. It costs you nothing. You have early reviews, preferably at this stage. The reason I filter it I have like filters on my mailing system. So people who come through my website, people who come through the link at the back of the book, and then people who come through the link in later books. And the concept being you have a cold reader, warm readers, and hot readers. And that idea, why would I not want people who are so involved in my series that they're taking the time to click the link through my book, go to my mailing list, and then ask me to be an advanced reader? Why would I not want that person supporting me from every launch? And so it's a really, I'm talking too much on it, but it's a really important point. There's no reason to have a cap on an advanced reader team as long as you're making sure those people actually support your series.
Yeah, that was one of the first big pieces of advice I took from you, actually. Like that, and when I shared my arc, it got so much more attention than my cover reveal, than anything else. Like sharing, being like, I have arcs available of my book. That was the first thing that actually got people to want to read it. So I agree. Like just getting
like the physical arcs, I would say you have to limit because like they cost a lot of money. Like, sending them out can be. It can be really. It's a choice. That's a whole other thing. Every piece of marketing in this industry is intangible. So people want a number. Like if I send out 30 arcs, how much money will I gain? It's not how that works. You have to just take a step and trust yourself. And if you have the money to do that, amazing. If you don't. And I think that's been an obsessive thing. I think it's probably a topic to talk about later on. Is the cost and what people talk about in money, and that's been a big thing on Twitter recently. About like paying for things and doing this and doing that. Whereas I think like every online conversation, it ends up in huge extremes and never in the true middle where the answer actually is, that's a whole topic on itself.
Yeah.
I've actually got a segue to that point quickly, Ryan, but I was actually thinking of asking you, because I know in the past I've heard you talk about how, if you get more books into readers' hands, it's worth doing, right?
Yep.
But things like free promos, for example, paid promotions and things like that authors can use. What's your opinion on those services?
Love them.
Mm-hmm.
I put my book free 2 days after I launched it, A Blood and Fire. I set it free for 5 days, and I ran promos, and I sent out like something like 20 or 30,000 free digital copies. It set me back, like, I can't remember what the promos cost in total, like $150 or something. And I kind of I set my budget. So I was working full time, and I set my budget, and I was like, right, my budget isn't this is how much I have. My budget is how much can I afford to lose? And that's literally what I said. And so I had a loss budget. How much can I, because I'd worked and I was writing, and while I was writing, I was taking a little bit, and instead of saving for a car or instead of saving for something else, I was putting a little bit aside. So I had a fund, and I was like, okay, I can afford to lose whatever's in this fund. And so how I spend it is my choice. And that's part of what I did. I was like, it feels weird paying someone to get a free book. But the concept is, I think a lot of people, we want instant gratification. So we send out like 20,000 free copies. I got 2 reviews. It's like, it's been a month. Like, these are free books. Like, a lot of people will, it's part of the 7 touches of marketing as well. So the concept is, some of your biggest stuff could be you send out 20,000 free copies. 100 people read it. All right. But then in 2 months, you launch the next book. Someone else says something. One of the people who got the free copy sees one of their friends reading book 2. So, oh, that's cool. Then they see an ad that you put somewhere else, and they see that one. Then they see your Instagram post, and then eventually they go, oh, I should start that series. Oh, I have it for free already. And all of a sudden, at that one point, all of the friction's gone. They have all your books on their Kindle. They've just seen it again. They've seen their friends reading it, and now you have a reader. And that could be a year later. And so it's so intangible, it's ridiculous. And sometimes you could have a lucky one where you send out 10,000 copies and 1,000 people read it. Like, that's
the theory of compounding.
But that's what it is. It's the reality is it's a long game, and if you can find a way to get some short-term traction too, it's almost like a magnitude enhancer. Like, but it is a long game. It's about getting the books into people's hands, reducing friction, increasing visibility, and getting lucky. That's the truth. Like, you need luck. But the whole concept is everyone becomes obsessed with luck, and saying how other people are lucky and they aren't lucky, to the point that the reality is you have no control of it, right? So how lucky someone else is has no relevance on your life. And when you're doing this, at the end of the day, if you're lucky and it happens and you haven't put the work in, you're gonna crash soon anyway. All right. Like, if your book isn't good and you get lucky and someone buy it and 100,000 copies sell, that's amazing. You're gonna have a great time. But if the book is shit, it's gonna end up with 100,000 shit reviews. Yeah, like, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, the readers will tell you the truth about your work, right? Like, they will always tell you the truth.
and the other way too, like Van Gogh.
Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. I think there's a delay. I was just gonna say Van Gogh died poor, and like no one appreciated his work till. So.
Yeah, but like you could get really lucky. You could have a friend who sends your book somewhere else, and Daniel Green picks it up, and Patrick picks it up, and Mike picks it up, and all these YouTubers pick it up, and then everyone fucking hates it.
Yeah.
So you've gotten your luck, and then there's the other end of it. Is it focus on what you can control, because you will absolutely drive yourself insane focusing on other people.
When you talk about increasing visibility,
Go ahead.
Sorry, Sam.
No.
When you talk about increasing visibility, like, do you think there's a correlation between kind of maintaining some kind of release period as an indie? Because I know, like, people have discussions about this all the time. Like, what's the point where we sacrifice, putting all the heart and soul into the project that we want versus getting it out there? What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously, like, if you've got a book coming out, say 6 months after your last book, that's going to help you with those 7 points of marketing that you were mentioning before. But it might come at the expense of the quality of the story.
It's the fear of becoming irrelevant.
Oh, that's it. Like, honestly, that's the biggest fear any indie, I think, has. Like, even like myself at this stage, like, I'm sitting here and I go, look, it's been 2 years since my main book. Like, the reality is, because what we forget, right, is even when someone looks at someone who has sold a lot more books, is we are stuck in this microcosm or this Twitter sphere or this Instagram thing where what we see we think is reality. But Twitter is that iceberg meme you see all the time. Twitter, Instagram, social media are the tip of that iceberg. Your sales are coming where you can't see. They're coming through Amazon. They're coming through the stores. They're coming through people who do not interact on your social media. Like that's a big one. And it's why mailing lists was so important for me, because there's a lot of people who aren't active on that who, weirdly enough, I know, like, I never signed up for mailing lists. I don't see the point in mailing lists. I hated mailing lists. And I used my own preconceptions to bounce against that until I eventually went, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And now I have like 22,000 people on it. And like, as you're building, it's important to find a way to reach those people. I don't think anything should sacrifice the quality of the story. So as the question a little bit confuses me, because I wouldn't be starting that period for the launch until I'm happy with the book. So like, you know, at the end of the day, it depends what you're trying to do. Like, I wanted to become, my goal was to become a single income career author. That's what I wanted. And without the product, I can't do that. So like, I would always, like, at this period in time now, I'm finished. The files are uploaded. I have the other files with my formatter for the print. Everything's off with the audio publisher. So I'm just sitting there and I'm just interacting, and I'm doing some interviews, and I'm doing Instagram and Twitter, and focusing on that and getting it going. But yeah, like, at the end of the day, it's a weird one, because there is no, people again bounce against the concept that there's no marketing like your next release. But the reality is, it is true. Like, if you go and you look at, I can very clearly see every time I launch a book, every single time, it is the biggest marketing you could possibly have. But if the book's shit, same result as with the reviews. You know, it's the biggest marketing. You'll sell more that day, but then if it's shit, your next one's not going to have the same peak. So there's nothing more important than writing the good book.
You were talking about the Twitter sphere kind of being its own thing, and the fact that so many sales come from like this larger general audience. I was wondering, do you do much to try and capitalize on the people who perhaps aren't online and following reviewers and what books are being chatted about on these like Twitter and stuff like that? Is there something you can do other than, like, I assume Amazon ads is one of them?
Did you say the people who are watching all those, or the people who aren't? Aren't. Yeah, like, I have run some small ads. I don't spend a lot on ads compared to some people I know. I spend now probably a reasonable amount compared to some people on AMS, but I don't spend on anything else. And I tried Facebook, I've tried BookBub, like anyone, I tested them all out a little bit. It's like $1 on a day and stuff. And some of those can be really good, and some of them, one thing I find is I run mostly now, I've kind of really just knelt in the whole intangible thing. So a lot of people, when they run Amazon ads, they run ASIN ads, which are ads that are marked specifically to a book. And they have a much higher cost per click. And they're usually, it's easier to see your conversion. So how much you're selling. And it's also really hard to turn over a profit, right? But because my book is, I'm lucky, because my book is epic fantasy, very firmly in that kind of epic classic fantasy. There's a bit of dark in it, a bit of light in it, you know, but it has a wide net marketing wise. So I can run category ads. So I run like an epic fantasy and classic fantasy category ad. And for me, that they spend money. So the hardest part that people have on Amazon ads is actually spending money, because Amazon won't run your ads unless you're having competitive bids. And then it's really hard to scale on Amazon ads, because again, you have to get that relevancy score, get the bids right, and it's a bit of a pain. But category ads, they will flow, but they have a really low conversion because they're showing it to everyone going through the category ads. But for me, because my book fits in so well with that category, what I'm doing is I'm trying to essentially, you will have a loss. So when you look at that AMS sheet, you are losing, like, all the time. And so I've had to take the same concept that I take with everything else, that it's intangible. And I've just had to go, it's not a loss. It's not a loss, because I'm getting as many eyes on that book as humanly possible through the Amazon ecosphere. And that's part of what I've been trying to do. It's not always replicable. Replicable, is that how you pronounce that? My brain just died. Like with a lot of stuff, sometimes something just works for one person and not for the other. But part of it for me is, and I said, the mailing list is where that comes in, right? Because everybody has an email. And if one person reads my book, another person reads my book, and I have a sign up at the start of my book and the end of my book, offering my free novella. And the concept is that I want to get people onto that mailing list, right? And at the start, I was earning 3 new subscribers a month. And then I was earning 10, and then 20. And now I'm at about 1,000. And as it flows through, the concept is you're getting those people to, they're not on social media, so you're getting to a place where you can contact them. So when my next book comes out, I can now contact those people. And then it's about, like, with the mailing list and with the newsletters, understanding and getting past your own mental block that this is not a marketing newsletter. Do not send it like a shop would send a marketing newsletter. Like, these people have signed up to you specifically. You know, I view everything as a chance to show a reader who you are, to separate you as the person so that they can see you as the person and support you as the person, because you will never find a more passionate reader than a reader who supports you as a human being. And if they support you as a human being and they like your stories, then you have this brilliant blend. And so if they're giving me that time, I give them that time. I probably spend about 3, sometimes 4 hours writing my newsletters. I send out 1 a month, and I will take a lot of time going through them, making sure that I'm writing them with my voice. Like, you know, if I'm stupid when I write shit, I'm going to be stupid in the newsletter. And it's doing that. And that is part of capturing that audience that isn't there. It's a slow term capture. Oh, thank you.
Ryan, that's one of the things, again, that I took from you, is that I noticed that early on you said, like, the author brand, you want to stand in front of your book and your brand is you. Like, you, yourself, your personality.
It also helps you to carry from series to series.
Exactly. And just you being yourself gave me the courage to also just be like, oh, that's how you do it. I can be myself. That's all you got to do. Just go out there and, you know.
It's much harder to be somebody else because you can break.
Exactly. And that's the kind of thing, is that I think that's kind of the structure, and one of the things that you're passing on is that mentality, which I think is very important, not just like the obvious things that you've kind of set up, like the everyone needs a story so far section now, or you're going to get burned by the readers. Everybody needs a prelude novella, or you're going to get
burned. The small things. I had so many people at the start ask me, how did you get so many reviews? I was like, did you ask anyone for one? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, I don't mean like, did you message an Instagrammer and ask them to leave a review? At the back of your book, did you ask someone to leave you a review? And I say, no, why would I do that? It's like, what do you mean? How can you expect to have loads of reviews if you're not even asking a reader to leave a review? And so what I did, and I think one of the main things for everybody is research. Like, when I started out, I went and I picked for specific reasons, I picked the best-selling books in my category with the highest number of reviews. I bought them, I read them, and I went to all their back matter and saw what was there. And the common thread between every single book that had a high number of reviews was a heartfelt personal letter asking for a review and explaining why they're necessary. Because I know before I was an indie author, I never left a book review anywhere, because in my head, these authors were these millionaire superstars who did not need my help. Yeah. And that's the reality now. Like, even like, we've had really funny interactions where, like, I've met one of Amy's friends or something, or Amy's met a friend of my wife, and so what does Ryan do? Oh, he's an author. It's like, oh, if he ever needs a job, you know, we have stuff going. And then and then if she says, oh no, we're good, then they think I own a Lamborghini. So there's no middle ground in that thought process. And it's part of, we're saying, getting consumed by that Twitter sphere and that microcosm that we're in, is we assume that all of the people reading our books have the general foundational knowledge that we have of this community. Sorry, my parents are calling me and I went to my computer. We believe that everyone is part of this community and has the foundational knowledge that we have, and they don't. Like, 99% of your readers, stop calling me. 99% of your readers. How dare
you care for me?
99% of your readers are not involved in the indie community or the book community at all. There are people sitting at home who do not understand, who will not leave you a review because they do not understand that you need one. Yeah. And so it's those small things about taking the time to research purposely, like researching with intent. Yeah. These guys have a lot of reviews. There has to be a reason why. Yeah. Let me read and find out why. Even if you buy a book and just examine their front and back matter, because it's rarely going to be the content of the book that make someone leave a disproportionate amount of reviews. It's got to be something else. Front, back matter, how they act in newsletters or social media, and it's about seeing those and seeing what things are important.
Ryan, speaking of a book and comparing it, I got to tell you, man, when I was first getting my book together, I had Of Blood and Fire in hardback and paperback, and I was like, what size? I had a measuring tape. I was like, what size font measuring? Just trying
to. When I was trying to find out what size I could print for a War and Ruin because it was so large, I literally printed out the file for the War and Ruin page, and I just slipped it into the Wheel of Time books, and I was like, all right, if they can do it, okay, fine. Yeah. I'm like, I can't go smaller than that.
Not smaller than that.
This series is so massive, they can do whatever the fuck they want. So whatever they've chosen as their limit has to be my limit. And so that's something that you're going to do for the rest of your life for everything.
Ryan, I just want to say, if you inspect Zach's front and back matter, can it be on the live stream?
I don't think we have a licensing for that.
YouTube might have an issue. I don't know.
You might get flagged for that. Yeah.
Hold on.
Just checking.
Hold on.
It's a different kind of subscription.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there it is.
Ooh.
Oh man, I love this.
Hold on. Oh, strangely enough, I wrote that.
Oh, there you go. Surprise, surprise.
I just inspected your front matter, Zach. I'll inspect your back matter later at Worldcon. Okay. Zach's such a cool guy. I like Zach. That was PG-13. I'm going to bring this book and I'll inspect the back matter at Worldcon.
So you've talked a bit about social media in particular, and we did have one of the other break-ins, Callum, was talking about how he's not really that into doing sort of podcasts and interviews, and he was just wondering, are these kind of like essential tools for indie, and kind of like from a broader standpoint also, just with social media in general, is it a vital tool, or is it just kind of like one way of getting exposure and you don't necessarily need to do the everything?
So, nothing is necessary. Right? Not really. But the way I look at these things is, imagine you're a mechanic and your career is the car in front of you. Okay? There's 1,000 ways to fix that car. Every time you choose not to, all of these things are tools. Social media is a tool. Interviews are a tool. Every time you choose not to use these tools, you make your job harder. So none of them are necessary. You can absolutely build amazing careers without using any of them, right? But every time you choose not to use something, you are going to make your job harder. Now, you could get struck by a little bit of luck, and some people get hit by this mad amount of luck, and they never have to touch any of it, all right? I've talked to some people. It's called the golden age back in about 2015, 2016, because there was so little competition at the time. If someone who knew what they were doing came in, wrote a great story, and got a bit of headway, they will never have to run an ad for the rest of their life. The algorithm has such dense data on them that they will just constantly get pushed. And that will happen. People get struck by lightning. But we're going to assume the caveat is we're not talking about someone getting struck by lightning. Okay? If you're not struck by lightning, every time you don't use those tools, your job's going to be harder. And that's the way I look at it. And at the end of the day, it's a common complaint you'll hear, especially with trad authors as well. They say, oh, well, I don't want to do this, and I shouldn't have to market, and I shouldn't have to do this. It's like, that's fine. But you live in a world where you do have to. So, at the end of the day, nothing really works. You never push yourself to become a better version of yourself unless you step outside your comfort zone. And it's not as easy for some people. Some people, that comfort zone is protecting them from something or something important, or sometimes the position that they might put themselves in is one that would create a vulnerability in them it's not worth going to. And that's okay. But learning to step outside your comfort zone where you can, and learning where you can push yourself is important. Like in this industry, and putting yourself out there and because at the end of the day, it is for most people, unless you're hit by luck and you can be almost not anonymous, but almost anonymous, you kind of do have to push yourself. And the book world and being an author is probably one of the most anonymous, not celebrity things, I can't think of the word for it, but like creative fields. So like actors and singers are not anonymous. If you're going to be a massively successful actor or singer, you're going to get known in a lot of places, like that just in the street. Brandon Sanderson could walk through Dublin, and I would say 1% of the population would know who he is. And that's the reality. It's one of the most anonymous creative fields. So you do have that as an advantage, but Yeah, again, it's another long answer because I'm Irish and all my answers are long. But nothing's necessary, but everything you don't use can and will be used against you. Not used against you, but that was just the point. Yeah, yeah. And everything you don't use is going to be something that that holds you back a little bit. It makes the job harder because you're not using one of the avenues that you could have used. And that can be okay. It's about a person sitting there and balancing what it's worth. What's it worth individually to not do those things. So
how do you schedule your time? I mean, you write incredibly long books in a relatively short period of time. Obviously you've got a new baby. You're quite active on social media, all these other things. Like, what does your schedule look like? How do you balance it all? Just like how is
I'm an extremely chaotic, unorganized person who now has massive spreadsheets. Like when I write, I have separate spreadsheets. So I have a writing timesheet spreadsheet that's done through, I have daily writing where it breaks down. I have my schedule here in blocks of 4 hours. So blocks of 4 hours where I have a writing period where I have to write 500 words. And then once I've finished 500 words, I'll take a 15 to 30 minute break. And then I have to write 500 words. And then that will go on. And that will be how my schedule is broken down for the day for accountability to make sure that I am hitting this word count. And, unfortunately, I come from a science background, so my head is it's oriented that way. I'm data driven with this sort of stuff. And I know that if I have a 400,000 word book that I have to write 2,000 words every single day for this period of time, or I literally will not make it. Like, it's not like fairyland where it's going to happen. I will not make my count if I don't hit those words. And so I sit there, I take accountability for it, I do it. And then in periods where stuff is really intense, I then have a full breakdown of the day where I have the writing period. This is where I'm going to play with my dog. This is where I take my dog for a walk. Then I go back to writing and then do this. And I only go on to that type of schedule if I'm really on the deadline and I need to be accountable. And then I will have I'll have an overall monthly one that I have here, which is absolutely intense as fuck. I can't orient it to show you, but I have a breakdown of every single month. I have the theoretical word count that my book should be at on each day. If the word counts were hit, the target daily word count that I was meant to get for that day, the daily words I actually got, the actual word count versus the theoretical, and then the differential. So I'm 2,000 words behind my project, and then that rolls for the year. So to show where I am at any point, if I'm in the red, if I'm in the green. I didn't start like that, but at the end of the day, I found that it ended up, actually, I know it sounds like a lot, but once it was set up, it gave me so much more structure. And not everyone, some people will just bounce off that, but it worked for me a lot. It really helped my headspace. It helped me know that I was where I needed to be. So I was stressing less because I was getting ahead and, okay, great. I know where I'm going to be. And if I fell behind, I could look at stuff and go, all right, I'm behind. How can I fix that? And I kind of knew, and I was never blindsided. Oh shit, I'm 30,000 words behind. And, I was kind of keep track of it every day. And that's made a huge difference for me. And even Amy, when I'm having periods where I'm really freaking out, she's like, have you been sticking to your schedule? I was like, what do you mean? I'll get real defensive. She's like, because every time you don't, this is what happens. And yeah.
Dude, that goes along with a supportive partner,
Oh, no, massively. Yeah. And I think at this stage for me, it just got to a stage where I was going this is my job. I love it, but it is my job. It is what has to pay the mortgage. It's what there's all these things. I need to take it as seriously as a job. And in fact, I take it far more seriously.
You're not just working a job. You're a CEO of a company. You're literally.
That sounds way too serious.
It does.
Well, to be fair, CEO, CMO, CTO, janitor.
Yeah.
Honestly, I left the pharmaceutical industry to leave abbreviations behind.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Is that you're managing so many things that I think that the way that you're structuring your life in that way with the thing, I think that that's another good lesson for people to learn, that you're not just winging this. You have a lot of structure in your life. You have a lot of thought.
I'm absolutely fucking winging it like crazy, but I try to wing it with a little bit of structure, as in
winging it with a database.
Exactly. It's I use the same analogy for writing. It's playing bowling with the bumpers up, right? Yeah. I could be throwing it through the legs over my head, but there's just bumpers, and unless I bounce it, I'm pretty safe.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that? Because I think all of us here, maybe besides Andrew, currently working on a direct sequel to book 1. And I think there's somewhat of a mindset block sometimes when you're writing a book 2.
Second book syndrome, man. Ugh.
Yeah, second book syndrome. And like, how do you kind of balance that kind of mental headspace with also sticking to like some kind of rigorous routine? Because I do something similar. Like, I use apps like Pacemaker and things to help me track my word counts and stuff. And it's helpful to a point, but I also find that there's a lot more kind of thought process in the writing when it comes to a book 2, and, you know, continuity and all these things I didn't have to consider for book 1.
I tell you, continuity in book 2 is nothing compared to continuity in book 4. Holy shit. I didn't realize that. I felt the same way in book 3. So now that I'm in book 4, I'm seeing
Oh,
that.
good. It doesn't go away. Excellent.
No, one thing I've found out that doesn't go away, and imposter syndrome never goes away either. Because you're either the author who always has imposter syndrome, or you're the author who thinks they're the next Tolkien and tells everybody. So there's 2 different parts there. No, for me it was weird. Like, when I finished book 1, I immediately started book 2 like the next day. Because I was obsessed with the fact that I needed to prove to myself that it wasn't a one-off, and I needed to, because finishing a book is an amazing achievement, and again, it depends on your goal. My goal was to become a career author. It's what I wanted. And not like, I think I almost separate writer and author, because I don't think I'm a writer in that, like, I'm not just like obsessively needing to write any story. I had this story that I wanted to write, and that's what I want to do. And I'll have more as I move on. But some people I know are authors, and I say like they're writers because their brains don't stop. They just need to write things. Yeah. And that isn't me. I love writing, like, with a passion, but I don't sit there. I'm not usually distracted by 10,000 ideas. But for me, I just jump straight into it. I think the really important thing, like when writing the second book, is to not be writing a second book. You're writing a book. This book needs to be its own self-contained thing. That can be the problem with second book syndrome, is a lot of people get so fixated in the same way you do in a story, because most commonly we use trilogies, right? So trilogies are broken up in the same traditional act structure as an individual story in 3 acts. So it's the same reason you can have a slog in the middle of the book, because an author gets obsessed with the start and all the things they're waiting to do at the end, right? So that can happen with second book syndrome. You write the first book and I can't wait to show the ending in the last book. So the middle book is just how we get to the third book. And that needs to not be the thing. Your middle book cannot be how you're getting to the third book. Your middle book needs to be its own book. And that was the thing for me, is trying to make it as not just entertaining, but as integral to the whole story as anything else. And I suppose that was it for me. Like, I don't think fast writing creates poor books. Because it does not matter how fast you write the first draft. It is about the time you take to fix it. Like, so that's why keeping on that writing schedule was important for me, because it kept me writing. And we always the term hard work is a real weird one in like modern society, because some people would be like, how dare you say you need to work hard? I work hard. It's not me saying you need to work hard isn't questioning how hard you're working. It's the choices that you make sometimes. Like when I'm writing, I will sit there on days where I have never used the concept of, oh, it's just not working today, I'm going to sit up and leave. Yeah. I can't afford to. So it's my job. I couldn't go and work in a company and then on Tuesday go, shit day, see you tomorrow, guys, and just leave. And so I sit there, and even if it's like dragging blood from a fucking stone, I will sit there and I will write. I have sat there, and not everyone can afford to do it. And I was lucky to be in a situation that I could do it because I didn't have a child at the time. You know, things were working, especially it was in the middle of COVID, so couldn't really go anywhere. So I would sit there at the start. I still do it now. I would sit there, could be 3 a.m. and I will only have written 2,000 words. And I could have started writing at like 10 a.m. that day. But those 2,000 words, they were like drawing fucking knives across my skin to get them done. But I got them done, and I'm now 2,000 words forward. And then the next day I would do it, and I would do it. And it's really grueling, and it's extremely difficult. And like, holy crap. Like, it was just that concept that someone has said, you know, if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. And I think that's so not true. You will work twice as hard. You will be more stressed. I've never, like I said before, I'd never had a panic attack until I entered publishing. And the only difference being is that you're okay with it.
Yeah, you got to learn to be okay with it, right? Like, it's part of it comes with the territory. Just like,
We did get this question earlier on, kind of about those harder writing sessions. Is there something that you can do to like set you up? And do you have some sort of? I know there's people that have like entire almost practices before they start writing, or do you just? Is it just I'm sitting down to write, so I'm going to sit down and write?
No, I'm like, yeah, I think it's something that develops over time. Like for me, I always go, I get a coffee and I get a cold drink. I always get a hot drink and a cold drink, and depending on the day, I'll get a hot drink, a cold drink, and a whiskey. It depends how it goes. And
at least
I'll
two
sit down.
beverages. I'm the same.
Yeah. And I'll sit down and I will always end up scrolling for 20 or 30 minutes. And then I'll have like ambient music. Like I have a YouTube playlist with just ambient music, like the common ones people have, like 2 Steps to Hell and loads of other ones. And I'll have different ones, different ambient music for different settings and stuff that I'm trying to write. Like, and I have found that over different periods of time, different ones will just kind of like call to me. Like there's like a 4-hour, 5-hour video of just rolling thunder and rain that worked for me massively at the end of this book. I'm telling that. Parts of the yeah, and I've used loads of that.
So
especially if I'm trying to get those vibes as well. Like I'll search music for vibes, and I can't write with any words in the music because I start writing the words. But yeah, it's about learning. It's a process. Like everyone is different. But I think a good place to start is if you can find a way to separate yourself from everything else is like your first place. Separate yourself from everything else. It just takes time. Like, find what works for you. After a while, I learned, it's something I really struggled with. Like I could sit there and it could take, there's a quote from Taika Waititi that a lot of people, again, bounced against on Twitter where he was, I don't know if it was actually a quote from him or if he was just in the meme. But it was basically saying like sometimes writing is just opening a laptop, sitting there for 8 hours, closing the laptop and leaving. All right. And, and they go, that's not how it works. And no one could ever do that for 8 hours. I'm like, I have spent 8 hours of literally at this desk without leaving this desk for 8 hours. And I might have written like 1,000 words. And that's not mathematically, that does not make sense. That means I have to have sat there just staring at space for quite a long time. And that's what happened because I literally said to myself, you are not allowed off the desk. Yeah. You cannot leave the desk until you at least hit this mark. And then eventually I would get so annoyed. I'd say, fuck it. I would go and I would eat. I would sit down with Amy. I'd come back at 11 at night and I'd write from 11 till 2 and I'd get 2,000 words. That makes no fucking sense. Yeah. And
Rob has a really
I finished the day with 3,000 words.
I do like Rob's point here. If you can't understand it and it's just death metal vocals, then you might be able to get away with it. But
is that how you wrote your novella, Rob? Is that how you wrote Performances of a Death Metal Bard? That's available on KU. Love you, Rob.
PayPal just pinged. Yes.
Okay, we talked a lot about writing, but I do want to ask some questions about the Bound and the Broken kind of specifically. I do think Louise had a really good question, just looking at the very thorough notes.
I did. I had so many questions. Most of them, where am I? Who are you people? So the Bound and the Broken is quite a unique series in the fact that it has so many different sizes in it. You've got your short stories, you've got your novellas, you've got your books. Do you have people argue over the reading order? Like, do you think there is multiple ways to enjoy the media?
Someone asked that question, didn't they?
yeah, it's all of these freaks.
Yeah,
I feel like it has to be included in a Ryan Cahill interview. If we don't ask you it, then it doesn't count.
It has gotten insane. It was really funny. I wasn't expecting that when I wrote that first novella, and then it kind of got a little bit crazy. And now there's quite a few different reading orders, including chronological, to the point that someone has developed a reading order where you actually stop reading midway through
a tandem read
to jump back to a different book because the timelines cross over.
Oh wow!
And that one's intense.
That's like the Machete. It's like a way of watching the original or the Star Wars original trilogy and the prequels, where you watch like
you have to watch it in like time order versus
There's a way where the books kind of like there's certain characters who are hundreds of years apart or whatever, 10 years apart, 2 years apart, whichever. But there's a way where you can almost follow them, where they're on this place, leave this place, come back, and you can finish this book and at a point go to this book where you see them walk in at this part here, which is directly before this part, but is 20,000 words separated in the start of the book. And I wasn't even thinking too heavily on it, and then I saw that reading order, and it's a little bit intense.
Wow.
Do you agree with it, or are you like, just read the damn books in the order I published them in?
I think if you read the books in the order that they're published, or with anywhere before or after Blood and Fire, if you read, I have to do that because I get stabbed if I don't say that. If you read them like regularly, then you can go back and you can kind of read them any way you want. Some people have done that, like I do rereads. There's people who are on like 7 or 8 rereads now at this stage, which is a bit insane. But they've gone back and read them in totally different orders, and which is cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
For outlining that sort of situation as well, I mean, Dane is one of my favorite parts of The Bound and the Broken.
Yes,
I was wondering, did you have all that kind of like ready in your head, and was it going to always? So, did you have like the exile kind of outlined before you jumped in, or?
Yeah, so in a brief way, because like I don't really do deep intensive outlines. So what I normally do is I knew how the series ends. I know how every book ends before I write that book. And then I'll like go, okay, what are in each book, what are the major things that need to happen for each character? Where do I want the character to start, and where do I want them to end, both emotionally, physically, and at the point in their journey? And then I can kind of, once I have those things and major events, I can then just flow and have fun. And I write then having a bit of fun. I know where things are going. I plan stuff like when people read book 4, there is stuff in book 1 that kind of shows that none of this, not none of it, but most of this wasn't just random. Like there's characters that are actually in book 1 that you did not realize were in book 1, that you're only finding out in book 4. And so there's small things like that. And then there's characters that you won't actually even know unless you read really closely, and a lot of readers won't even realize it. Because that's that balance where some people accuse people of spoon feeding, and then you have like Malazan, where it's like some people say this is the most incredibly intelligent thing ever written. I'm like, actually, there's parts of that where he clearly just did not know what he was doing, and then fixed it in later books, which is an author tool. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. Actually,
it just doesn't mean he's a Mensa member.
That goes really great into the point of like how much of the story, because your story's so vast at this point, and like I'm at the point where I'm about 500,000 words in to my story. It's starting to get like so vast, but so many of the things I'm discovering as I get there, like the whole paradox of when Tolkien described going to the Shrine of the Prancing Pony and finding Aragorn sitting in the corner. He didn't plan Aragorn to be there. How many of those have you discovered? Like how much of
loads.
I'm sure there's
like
got
even
right.
But Farda, who is like one of the people's like favorite characters, like quite literally, he was just a captain on a ship, and I was writing him, and it was part of the scene. And then he flipped a coin in my head, and I was like, all right. Then I just switched over, and then I wrote like 500-600 years of history, and then now he was the main character.
That's
and like that will happen. Like there's the major plot points that happen are all planned, and how they play out will change based on how the characters change. So like, and it's something that I learned as I started writing, is that, you know, I didn't understand it when I was writing my first book, and then as I moved on and I got better and I started trying to understand what was going on, is that one of the major points where authors create problem is where their characters bounce off their plot and they push through with the plot. So your characters should and will change based on what happens, because if they don't, like they're not human, they're not complex, they're not actually learning and changing. And as they change, they might not make the decision that you wanted them to make at the start of the book. So either you have to go back and work a way that would rationally make them make that choice, or you have to change the choice.
It's kind of thing like characters, right? Like you're going on a journey through this world with them, and you're going to meet people, and some of those people are going to be really interesting, and you want to, this person, I'm going to make them a story because I want to meet this person, know more about them.
Yeah.
You know,
there's loads of stuff like that. Like I'll make choices, and like other people's favorite characters is a character called Tarman, who is like a lot of people love him, and I killed him in the draft for the 3rd book, and then I killed him, and I stopped, and that made me change a lot for him, because I read it and I went, you know what? Part of the thing for me with him was this character. It's like one of the other main characters, Kaelin, to me was like Anakin Skywalker, and Tarman was his Qui-Gon Jinn.
Oh yeah.
Kaelin and Tarman were what happened if Qui-Gon never died, and so if Qui-Gon dies, Kaelin will become Vader. And so that's when I realized the choices that I wanted Kaelin's character to make later in the book, he would not make rationally on his own. He needed this other character to pull him back, because this guy is a younger guy. he does suffer. He suffers with anger. He suffers with loss. He suffers with where to place blame, like things that he learned from his dad, and he needs this other character to help turn him into the character I need him to be later. And so if I kill this character now, a character who was an important character for me, but I didn't realize how important until I killed him in the draft, and then I used a bit of logical thought to go, no, he's really necessary. Like without this guy, I will be breaking that wall. I will, if I make Caelan's character make the choices I need him to make without the intervention from this character, it won't feel realistic for my reader. And so that's a big thing that I learned that I didn't know when I started writing. And as I kind of wrote more and as I started to really examine that, and I saw it when I was watching like The Last Kingdom. So it's Bernard Cornwell series, but it's also on Netflix. And Uthred does it, and it's a problem that kills me in the series because I love the series, and Uthred's an amazing character. But at the end of every book and the end of every series, Uthred completely reverses his internal logic to make a decision he would never make just to perpetuate the next story. And that kills me because I love the series. But I learned a huge amount from watching that. It made me realize why I was getting frustrated at the end of every series was because the character was defying their own internal logic to further a pre-established plot. And it just, that like something clicked in my head with that. And I was like, oh, I'm better now.
Cool.
I think,
that makes sense. You're picking up along the way, like you're learning as you go, and that's important too, right? Like you've got to, and you know what I love, Ryan, too. You always bring up, and especially early on, I really connected to you. You always bring up Kobe Bryant, and I want to say, like, just the model of Kobe Bryant. You have become the Kobe Bryant of indie publishing.
Don't say that. That's not okay because he's too cool a human being. Nobody can ever be that.
I think it's more of like the doing things in a way that people didn't previously think. So when you came in, essentially, like I know there was a lot early on. I heard you talking a lot about the self-publishing podcast and kind of the Mark Dawson school of thought. And I think that you took a lot of advice from those guys early on, but you applied it to fantasy. And I don't think there was anybody, and I could be wrong, but I didn't at least see many people doing that kind of school of thought in fantasy. And it kind of just reminded me of the way that Kobe Bryant, he couldn't take on Michael Jordan, so he had to do it differently. He had to do some different moves that maybe Michael didn't know. And that's why I make the comparison, is not necessarily...
Oh, no, I was only joking, by the way. But
keep it coming.
Yeah. But I the way of taking a different approach and seeing things differently, and then also trusting in yourself to make those decisions, that this isn't necessarily the way things have been going, but I'm going to trust myself and do this differently. You're like it's kind of like a trailblazer mentality. And like you said, a lot of things that come with that, in that you've just inspired reams of people behind you. But it also allows you to kind of break through a lot of the self-doubt and the things that people struggle with. Like you struggle with things, of course, but you find a way to fight it. And I think that's inspiring to a lot of us, because a lot of us just struggle with that stuff and we struggle to fight it. But seeing somebody fight through all of the things that we struggle through is really inspiring, you know? So it's worth...
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
I was done. No,
I think it is a really important point. When people are on social media, when people are on interviews and doing everything else, unless the interview is about a specific thing, we always focus on the positive, and that's what we always see. We always see the best part of something because that's what you portray on social media. And it's like, it is important to understand that as an author, from any perspective, that there's going to be a lot of shit you're going to struggle with, and that the other people that you're seeing are struggling with those things too. And that's not to bring down the struggle that you're currently experiencing, but it's about understanding that, you know, you're not the only person going through this in a good way. I don't know if it's good, but like in a positive sense. Yeah, but it's about understanding that, because it can be really hard when you see someone else having the thing that you want or succeeding in a certain way. And it's also understanding that taking away the success that they have doesn't bring it to you. Is a big part of it. Like, and if anything in this industry, it can help you enable to have the success that you want, because, you know, as you build connections and build friends, and you understand is this industry it's a weird, especially for indie authors, is not a competitive industry. So it is for space and for a bit of launch time, but the reality is your career is not going to come from your launch in indie. Launches are so much more important in trad. Because if your book doesn't launch, the publisher might just not give a shit anymore. But in indie, you're the publisher, so you can do stuff like A Blood and Fire earns more money today than the peak of its first year in publishing. Like, and the longevity of those things is an advantage that indie authors have. But there's so much to it, and I think for me at the start, it's why it can be dangerous sometimes if people see like what I've done and they try and replicate that. Is the reality is there are always pieces of different people and how they've carried themselves and how they've done that can be taken and used and learned from. But I've always gone in the mentality that I'd rather be the first through the gates and trip over my own feet than be the person who follows, because you get the most risk and the most reward by being the first person. Like almost always. It's that the value of being novel. And so sometimes if we try and replicate everything someone's done, you know, it just doesn't work. And also the fact that we always miss the intangibles. We see the aspects that they've done that are very highly visual, but we don't see the things in the background that maybe charge those to allow the success to happen. But I think for me, being indie, like the main one was just being in charge of your own success. Like if I fail, like I can't blame anyone else. I can only blame me.
I like that.
You know, at the end of the day.
That exact quote, I remember hearing you say that, and I was like, you know what, that's so true, because you're allowing yourself to take your future into your own hands, and whatever that means for you, right? Like whether you want to work as Kobe Bryant or you want to just coast through it, whatever you want out of it, having it in your own hands is, I think, really important. It's a really cool step in the world for art, and it allows people like you to emerge. It allows people like Will White to thrive and find fan bases, and I think it's a really important step in just driving forward publishing in general, because it's really blurring the lines, and it's really like what you've inspired. And like you said, we're not just copying take for take, but there's a couple broad things that you've kind of introduced with the free novella and just carrying yourself, using yourself as a brand, and those kind of things.
It's a really funny one. It's a really funny one given the series that I write, because when people talk about this, you know, A Blood and Fire, like, it's really fun. People go, oh, it's just a mishmash of, and they name like 17 books. And I'm like, but like everything, what the fuck isn't a blend of all of our books?
Nothing
like,
dragons.
If you turned around to me and said, like, you've ripped off this book entirely, and then again, I think the whole concept with writing is it's not really about the idea. Like, I think if you look at, was it the Codex Celera? That was Jim Butcher, wasn't it? Yeah. So there's a really funny story with Jim Butcher, and he was doing an interview, like a panel with someone else, and the concept was, is the idea more important than the writer? And Jim Butcher had the argument, look, you give me the shittest fucking idea in the world, and I'll write a good story. And so the guy was like, yeah, fine. Lost Roman Legion meets Pokemon, Codex Celera. And that's that concept is that those ideas aren't what's prized, unless they're like, they can be. If the idea is so momentous, you can build something around it. You still need a good writer. A bad writer will still make a bad book out of that. So the writer is always more important. But it's what a writer does with the different concepts that puts the uniqueness on it. And so I thought it quite funny when comparing the fact that I write classic fantasy to then make the comparison. And it's very true that, you know, you're taking little pieces of all the things that work. And that's exactly what I tried to do when I started as well. Like when I'm writing A Blood and Fire, that my purposeful thing was to create something that had the nostalgia of the things that I loved in old classic fantasy, but that would allow me to enjoy it as an adult. And so the other people who had that experience the same as me, who were well into fantasy, but maybe when they went back to read some of their classics, they didn't vibe with them the same way, because their reading level had changed and their comprehension had changed and their life experiences had changed. And then also to try and find a way so new readers who never read fantasy, that it would be accessible, that they could come into it and they could slowly find their way in. And then as you get into book 2 and it expands and spreads, they're not just smacked in the face with like complex fantasy, that they can kind of get used to it. And that was very, very, very intentional on my part. And what it leads to is a book that a lot of really kind of, I'm going to like cerebral critics will kind of be like, oh, it's not novel enough for it. It's derivative. And I go, that's fine. Like, it's an absolutely fair comment. But I'm writing the series for these readers. I'm not writing them for an award. I'm not writing it for, one person. I'm writing it as an experience, and some people aren't going to like it. And later on, I'm hoping that I can create this place for a large amount of readers. And it's part of it, part of everything. Like I said, having a goal about what you want to achieve before you do something is probably one of the single most important things you can do in any aspect of everything to do with publishing. A lot of people come in writing a book, launching a book, and not actually knowing what they want from it, which can make it really hard because you can't make the right decisions if you don't know what you want your outcome to be.
Yeah, that's so true. That was exactly like the question Andrew had about preparation of like when you're just starting out and you have a complex idea, right? It's like getting it out, getting that complex idea into a novel form that can be told as a story. Like a lot of early writers, they have so many ideas that are fantasy concepts and they're trying to mash it all in. But to recognize what it means as you're telling a long form story, each book has to be its own thing. Each book has to trap the next. It's not just like a whole thing. So you've really got to understand what kind of story you're telling, because if you just start writing something, there's so many people I met on my, I took a writing coach journey when I first started, and there's so many people like,
that sentence is one of the most American sentences I think you could ever hear.
I
took a writing coach journey.
Oh no.
Yes, I have this thing where I usually have marbles in my mouth when I'm trying to talk, so it's one of those. But it was what I learned is there were so many people that had so many words written, but there was no book there. There was no. Yeah. There was 500,000 words of great fantasy concepts, but there was no story. And I think you hit the nail on the head in saying that just understanding what you're trying to do will go a long way. And even I heard you talking with Patrick the other day, like you're open to, you're like, I'm going to have this many books in the series, but I'm open to splitting this next one if the story needs it. And that's the mentality that you have to have, I think, it just as an author. To tell a good story, not even to be successful, just to tell a good story, you have to have that mentality, right? That you're serving the story, like you said, you're serving your readers, you're serving the characters, and allowing it all to come to you as it goes along. And if it needs to be longer, it's going to be longer. It's nothing to do with money or trying to stretch it out. And the novellas are nothing to do with. I got the question before: are you just writing novellas to get money? But it's not that. You're trying to expand the world.
That's like it's one of the.
It's so backwards.
That's one of the weirdest sentences because novellas are not known for earning money.
And nobody cares usually. It's like, I've got another novella coming out. I'm like, great.
So are you just farting to hit on me?
Yeah. the question about I heard you talking about
Sam, I need to jump across here real quick and just make a point to say that I do actually know Scott is Canadian. But
I wasn't gonna say anything too.
I saw them all freeze. They were like, do we tell him?
It was a very American phrase. That's
Continue. Scott and I are about 4 hours apart, which in Canada is like an afternoon drive. No, but I heard you talking to Patrick about this as well, where someone's like, the book's just so long to make money. And it's like, a lot of us here have written, I don't know if we've written over 400,000 word books, but a longer book definitely makes you less money in the term at least.
But it's one of the big things that with Brandon Sanderson at the minute, it's become a real core topic of conversation because his books are so long. And up until this book, and it's really funny to say poorly received, considering the fact that it has like a 4.44 rating. But for him, that's poorly received. But it wasn't a problem until one of his books was poorly received. But it's become a thing now, and people are obsessed with, people are writing these really long books now. And it's, honestly, they really aren't. Like, I don't know anyone bar me and him, and there's maybe one or two others I know who are scraping that mark, who are really writing at that size. And I tell you one thing, it is absolutely fucking not to earn money. It has worked for me in a sense, but if you break them down, and I sold 3 books instead of 1 book, I would earn more money. That is also assuming that the story maintains the same quality, which it wouldn't, which is the reason. The big thing about justifying longer books isn't about justifying the word count. Like you're watching Patrick's thing yesterday, then for me, it's about justifying why the story needs to be told in this long form and not a short form. Yeah. And for me, if I broke this book into 3 short books, they would be 3 poor books, and those poor books would not succeed. And it's the fact that this specific story is better told in this long form because of the interconnectedness of the characters and the threads and how the world works. So like I could write shorter books, but I wouldn't be telling this story.
Yeah.
Like I have no problem writing shorter fiction. Like I can write the novellas, I write the short stories and other stuff, but this story just naturally tells itself in this length. And like I think I'm lucky that I avoid side quests because I can use the novellas for those bigger chunks of the side quest. And so I don't write like A to B, B to C plot style formula, but I'm able to move much more linearly than I think classically some of those larger books do, because I don't really, like Dane doesn't go off on a search for a mystical apple. Like it doesn't happen. You know, I think that
cool
helps.
Story,
and having, it would be a cool story, and that's going to be great for the short stories that I write. But like, you know, it's about recognizing that too and telling those kind of stories, recognizing, hey, here's a cool story, but I'm not going to write it. You know, understanding that those cool stories that they could be told later on in a separate thing, but they would ruin this story. You know, I need to move this story in a certain way, and having it helps for me as well, because like I have like I think there's like 17 POV characters in the Vampires and Dust. Now some of them are a lot more prevalent than others. But having that many characters and that many threads will naturally increase the story size. Like we had one a while ago where I went back and I checked. So Kaelin's word count in book 1 is, I think it was something like 130,000 from a 147,000 word book. His word count in book 2 was 130,000. His word count in book 3 was 135,000. So the story didn't blow. His point of view and his story didn't get excessively large. It's exactly the same. The story has expanded by introducing new narratives. And so like that's the danger when you're writing the longer ones, is making sure that you're still writing the story the most efficient way it can be told. You know, we don't have to be A to B plot economy, but like, you know, try not to go crazy.
I think that was exactly what happened with George, is that he kept adding characters and POVs, and it just kept bloating. And I actually did the same thing that you did to your own book with the Game of Thrones books, to figure out the POVs. And it was the same thing that you're saying. Each character, they were very similar to each book. The problem is that he had more every time, and that they weren't going in the right direction. So we needed to
see. I think his is a weird one, because like I have so much more patience and respect for him than I do with Patrick Rothfuss in his situation, because like, you know, people kind of come up with all these different reasons for why George hasn't released a book, and kind of go, okay, you write this massive phenomenon series, and then have an industry come out and create this series that blows it out of the water, makes it even bigger, and then takes your ending, smashes the ending, destroys all worldwide gratitude, and no matter what you do, you will lose. If that was your ending, you now know how poorly received it was. And you think about how much your brain right now, as an author at your stage in your career, fixates on stuff. Imagine knowing that whatever you see, whatever you write, is going to be read and broken down across all YouTube, all these reviewers everywhere in the world. You already, if you put a tweet out saying, I had an ice cream today, someone will call you a cunt. Like you're going to get destroyed. Like, so can you imagine that kind of pressure? Even if they had your ending, now you're screwed, because you know the world hates your ending. And if they didn't have your ending, now you have to make sure that the ending you have is better than that ending. And so the kind of pressure on top of him is so astronomically large. Like, could you imagine sitting there being like, oh, okay, cool, I have a bit more time to write the last few books, like the series now, I can chill now, it's established, I can, you know, maybe breathe. And all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I'm dead. And I think like, so I get really defensive of him, because like I see some of his blog posts, and some of it is really deep and dark and pensive, and I feel really like he can be very human. And so it's a horrible situation. I'm just like, I just wouldn't want to be in that. He if anything, the way he's talked about TV adaptations and what's happened to him has made me go, do you know what? Is it even worth it if someone would come in and buy the very serious?
It's a fair point. A very fair point. Like you said, in today's, it's kind of like they're so willing to just tear apart. A fandom is so willing to tear down not realizing that you're ruining everything for.
And they think they could do it better every time, and then they couldn't.
I've said this a million times. The only one I feel strongly on is Wheel of Time. And even that, I wish it all the success.
And you know what's
I'm not
funny,
going to sit
Ryan?
there and hope it dies. I really hope it's successful,
Yeah.
and the people that are loving it get to enjoy it for 10 more years.
Yeah.
But it's
You know
just
what's
not
funny,
the story that I wanted to watch, and I'm not going to
That's
watch
right,
it.
that's right.
Okay.
My wife
We've lost that in
absolutely
media.
loves this
Like,
season. My wife absolutely loves this new season of Wheel of Time. I was like,
I might legitimately go and just watch episode 4, season 3, and nothing else. But because I want to see, because the whole point for me is I wanted to see like the story that I loved, in a visual medium, and then it was very clear from season 1 that the showrunners wanted to write their own story set in this world, and it wasn't what I wanted. But if someone else is enjoying it, amazing. Like, let it run for 10 more years, let it be incredibly successful, and let them have a great time, and then hopefully more studios will want to produce more works, and that would be great. But I think we've kind of lost that in society and in like critique of media, and the fact that we can't understand that it's okay to like dislike something and for it to still exist. Like, we have to want to burn everything to the ground.
Well, there's so much democratization, like talking about adaptations. Like, let's say we're you look at with books, right? We're not in the world we were in 10, 15 years ago, and obviously before. Like, someone can come out with a really successful indie book, obviously yourself, or I'm not sure if anyone's heard of this series, Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's not very
Sorry.
You heard of it?
Yeah, I know on the wrong channel to talk about that, I know. But there's huge democratization, right? And it puts the power in the hand of the individual. And I think we're going to see that with a lot of television. We see it with YouTube. And you hopefully won't have to rely on an Amazon or an Apple or whatever to do adaptations.
Well,
so maybe
Will White's already doing that. So Will White's,
there's an
and he's already started to get.
He did just Kickstarter. So did he?
Kickstarted it, right?
It was like $1 million Kickstarter.
Kickstarter,
yeah, which is incredible.
No, you know what we need? We need more animation. We need Vox Machina. We need like Avatar style fantasy stuff where they don't have to spend $8 million on making one fireball look realistic. They give us Castlevania, like that kind of stuff.
Well,
I love that.
Manga,
if anyone was ever going to give me an adaptation, it would be that. I'll be like, please.
Manga to anime is like a great adaptation because the mediums are so close, right? If you look at like, I don't know, Full Metal Alchemist or whatever, following the manga, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is a funny one, like this topic in general, when it comes to like indie authors, because it is something that happens. We have a massive tendency to get distracted by the far off lights. And but it's a thing that I've experienced with indies who have started to find a modicum of success, and then they get distracted by the far off lights, and all of a sudden book 2 doesn't come out for 3 or 4 years, or 2 or 3 foreign publishers come onto them and they spend more time fixating on trying to get foreign deals for the first book than they do writing the second book, and that is so easy to happen in our industry. And the way you're saying it there about the different mediums and adaptations and stuff, and it came into my head because that's happened to me, where I've sat there and I've gone, oh, I'd love to get this done, and get this done, and get this done. And then I sat there one day and I was like, my ADHD needs to get under fucking control, because I need to write. Like, your best advertisement for any of those things happening is just keep writing. And there's a lot of in the indie sphere, we see a lot of it, right? Because we see a lot of the bigger successes, and we see the stuff that's obvious. People are active on social media, but I guarantee you the top 15%, that might be pushing, maybe top 10% of book earners, indie book earners on Amazon, you probably don't know their names, right? And the amount of full-time authors, indie authors, I would say 70%, you don't know their names, because there's a lot of them out there. The whole concept of the midlist actually exists in indie, but a lot of those authors, they're not on Twitter or Instagram or anything else. They're just writing and living their life and doing their thing, and they might not make a living off book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All of a sudden they've written 20 books. They're 5 years in, 6 years in, 10 years in, and at year 10 they start making a really damn good living, because the accumulation of all of the sales start to do something. It doesn't happen for everyone, but it's just, there's so many different avenues that, and what I was saying earlier about the Twitter sphere and like the microcosms that we get stuck in, and what we see is our reality without understanding there's things outside of that. Yeah. Like, and it's so like you might see me, but you don't see the 2,000 other authors earning way more and selling way more because they just aren't active in the same social media circles that we're active in.
They're too busy because they're writing.
Yeah,
that's right.
100%. But like where you have Dungeon Crawler Carl, you have hundreds of other lit RPGs who are earning crazy money who you've just never heard of, like at all. And you're only here with Dungeon Crawler Carl because there's so much more like commerciability and Matt was a bit more social media present and then it had a massive deal and but that's part of the I can't imagine how many readers I've gained from one reader bullying another reader into reading the series. It's important. Word of mouth and bullying
bullying.
I do think it's really easy to see the really big successes and just think they've always been like that since book one. What I thought was really interesting was something you said earlier about A Blood and Fire making more this year than it did like in the first year. So I was kind of wondering when you're talking about that, was it exponential or was there dips? Was there moments where you're like, oh no, as you see like less sales come in, or was there
even
like one moment
Amazon
where
trend,
it really picked up?
I actually have open here, even from an Amazon trend, because obviously a big part of making a career from independent publishing is about diversification. So it's about making sure you get income streams from different formats. So like now finally my physical is earning like a large amount compared to my ebook where it used to be tiny. My audiobook is doing the same. So I'm less reliant. I'm less scared for something to go wrong. But I do look at like the Amazon trend as a marker. And like I'm looking at it now and it's not that it is actually like it's a constant. So from a trend perspective, it's a constant slow upward trend and with huge spikes on launch days. Like that's what it is. It's never really exponential. It's always been constant and slow and rolling and just builds its way up. And the same with like print. Like I would have sold like, 2 print books a month and then 5 and then 10 and then 12 and then 14. And now for every ebook I sell, I basically sell a print book. And that's unheard of for in general because, but it is something that I focused on really hard. I didn't at the start, and then I kind of went, okay, I need to make sure that I have a bit more of a safety net in my career. I need to make sure that if my ebooks dip, that I will still have another source of income because it's one of the scary things that a lot of people don't realize before they do it is when the thing you love becomes your job, everything changes. And like, your healthcare, like my daughter's healthcare, my house, all of the things that I need to live and the people that I need that look after me and that I need to look after are reliant on this now. So, I don't have the perks I used to have in my old job. And so I got to make sure that there's a safety net. Like I don't have someone who's guaranteed they're going to pay me every year the same amount constantly. So no matter how successful you are, like that's always sitting there in the back. So like diversifying, once you have established something, diversifying is important. The problem a lot of times is we get too quick on trying to diversify and the thing we're diversifying can just slowly go down.
So when you talk about diversifying, you just talk about different platforms in the way of adding audiobooks and things, or
it's different revenue streams. It's about maximizing. Okay. So essentially, so you could have audio is one, print is one, Kickstarters can be one for some people, merch can be one for some people, foreign translations can be there, but it's about knowing like, balancing your workload. 90% of your work still needs to be on writing. But there's no point in diversifying something that doesn't exist. So at the time, like, I wasn't diversifying with this when I had one book. I was like getting book 2 and then book 3. And kind of around when book 3 hit, some stuff naturally grows. And it's about targeting certain audiences. So like there's specifics. Like I targeted a trad-based audience. That was my plan. It's why I went with an iconography style cover because that's more recognizable to people who would go in at the time and see iconography style covers in the bookshop. And it signals epic fantasy to a lot of people. And it's what trad readers were used to seeing. And I wanted all of my things to be trad because I know trad readers buy physical books, right? Because traditionally that's what they do. You go into a bookshop and you buy books. And a lot of heavy indie readers didn't as much. There's more ebook and KU and that sort of stuff. And then you have a lot of the special editions started coming out, and then collecting special editions in the last 3 years or so has really become a thing, especially with like the broken binding, building and expanding and all the different stuff happening. But it's about trying to find ways. Those things will naturally grow. But then as you hit certain points, you kind of have to be more conscious about making them grow.
There's like a lot of other different services you can use, Ryan. Like, did you ever use like BookBub, like do a BookBub deal to get like you said, you had your spikes on launch day, but did you use other sources to give you launches?
See, no, not really. So I used some BookBub ads at some stage, but I never got an actual BookBub, like the big deals they get. And a lot of them are based on having a discount launch, because like BookBub users want deals. That's why they're on BookBub. So like, you know, a BookBub reader isn't going to respond to $4.99.
Yeah.
Like they respond to 99 cents and they respond to free. And that's totally fine. Like, but for launches, I used to have the concept of putting stuff on sale for launches. And for my first book, that was definitely the right thing to do. But like, as I moved on, I realized that it was only really just costing me money if I did it, because a lot of my readers who were going to, I'm lucky enough that I've gotten to a stage where I have a readership who will show up for me on launch day. Yeah. And I need the money because I've got to feed myself and stuff. So I try not to put on
those pesky things like food, and water, and
food,
shelter.
Yeah, but no, they can be really good. I think I've heard crazy numbers when I started of the amount of money people put into launches. Like, I mean, I know people who would put like 7-10 grand into a launch, like US dollars, pounds. Like
that's like 50 million Canadian dollars. So that's
give or take.
$49,000 AUD.
I do not do that, and I don't really put any. I don't actually do anything for my launches now. But that's honestly, I know that's it's luck, but also like a product of the work that I've put in. That I do a lot of activity. Like I'm here. I'll be on social media. I do my newsletters. I spend a lot of time like getting artwork ready and other bits, but I don't do advertising. I have my normal ads that I just leave running, but I don't do anything crazy. Whereas I do know people. There's less of it now that Facebook and Amazon have become a little bit less effective. But it was crazy numbers being dropped.
Yeah,
people did a lot more than that too.
So you're running you're running category ads on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I know too, because what's really funny is I learned from you to play brand defense with your ads, and your book still appears on my page. Even and I just because the algorithm, it really is a game of like you said before, and somehow you have a higher relevancy score on my book than I do, which I find amazing. And that's just a power to, like you said, the work that you put in, building it up from the start, just leaving it running, the category ad with the state of
every single thing. If you think about it, right? We talk about algorithms as though they're made of magic, but they're not. They're some of the most sophisticated computing software processes in the world. That's the point. Like Amazon uses it. Amazon, one of the most successful storefronts in the whole world, uses it for a reason. Yeah. So if you use a little bit of backwards logic and you think, right, what's the most important thing to any store? And the most important thing is sales. What's your best measure of how well you're doing? Is your conversion. How many people appear on a page and how many of those people then buy something? And so it's weird then that so many authors are focused on cost per click, because cost per click is not your relevant score. Cost per click is just how much you're paying for a click. What's important is how much you're paying for a sale. All right. You can get 100 clicks, but if those clicks give you one sale, you are absolutely bleeding money. Like you're hemorrhaging. And I think that was the big thing for me. And it's why it was really important for me to get the audio format, the hardback, the paperback, all the other stuff on the page. And even like with A+ content, I think people need to be really careful, because people saw a new thing we can use and then they throw loads of A+ content on their page without thinking there's a negative. But if your page looks unprofessional, that's a negative. So if what you've put on the A+ content, sometimes less is more. Sometimes you're throwing A+ content there that just it doesn't scream to someone who doesn't know the industry professionalism, or like a publishing house has put this out. So there's some stuff that works and some stuff that does scare Sam.
Canadians startle easy.
I don't know what happened there. My brain kind of disappeared at Sam with Sam.
He's back.
I don't know.
Behind him, come.
Yeah. Do you just do that to switch to the other side?
Yeah. The A+ content, I was just so frustrated.
With the whole.
Did you help off to quickly change it?
Maybe the quickest change I've ever seen. But the whole thing essentially is you want to reduce friction between a reader and a sale as you can. And
Yeah.
if I can make my page as appealing, the book page, the page people probably don't actually pay that much attention to, but you should, because it is literally your sales page.
Yeah.
The more people, the higher percentage of people I can get to buy my book on that page, the more Amazon is going to recommend my book to other people, because it knows if it sends 100 people, say for instance, you were saying it has a higher relevancy score on your page. If you said 100 people to Scott's page and 100 people to my page, and 50 people of those 100 buy the book when they go to my page, and 49 buy the book when they go to Scott's page, they will send them to my page.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? And I think that's why sometimes we kind of ignore logic, because it's much easier to think that the algorithm's made of magic. But it would make no sense. So it's something that I've been practicing on, and for me, again, a lot of it's still intangible, but it makes sense and it does seem to work. And at this stage now, my organic recommendation on Amazon is still really, really strong. And a big part of it is it's also about why you don't try to send troves of people to your page. That's not actually what you should be doing. If you send 10,000 people to your page who are not ready to buy your book, you're destroying your relevancy score. And that's a big one, is why sometimes those big book club ones I don't like, because you get a huge spike, and Amazon's algorithm is also made to smash down spikes. So it doesn't feed it the same way, because they don't want one-off, they want trends. But it's a big one. If you're sending 10,000 people and only 500 of them are epic fantasy readers, Amazon saying, oh, well, if I send 10,000 people to his page, he's only going to sell 400 books, 300 books. Why would I do that? I can send these 10,000 people to this other person's page, and then Amazon will earn way more money.
That's really good. That's really good to say, because there is an approach that you can take of just throw everything at the wall. And I myself have used that to a point. But I've only done one free promotion, and just what you say, those points are so good. They've been brought up in our Discord of how effective is a free promotion, because you're sending a lot of people to your page that might, in this case, they're getting it for free, but you're giving a lot of people a book that they might not even like. You might be setting yourself up for some bad reviews.
Now, it is why some of them can be good, because if you're being a bit more tailored, if you're picking the free promos that are based on fantasy or epic fantasy readers, that can be quite a bit better, because at least they are going to your page and they're getting your book. So the relevancy score actually it is separate, because a paid purchase and a free purchase are different. But they do work in the recommendation engines for KU from everything that I know from other people. Or at least that's the best guesses that we have. So if you're sending 10,000 free readers to your page, and 7,000 people download the book, Amazon isn't really, I'm sure it is somewhere in the depths of its algorithm tracking who then leaves a review. But what its major one is, we sent 10,000 people there and 70% clicked buy. So as long as you're, picking the right ones, if you've it was a Book Barbarian was one of the ones a while ago, and that's very much a fantasy style one. And then I'm pretty sure Free Booksy and stuff, they tailor down to people who've clicked onto the fantasy lists. So it does make it a bit better. Whereas I think BookBub is just so absolutely massive that it's diluted like crazy.
Yeah, they have their categories, but I think there's a carryover between, even in BookBub, any of them, people just clicking to get more deals on books. And there might be fantasy is such a wide margin, like you were talking about earlier with romantasy to Brandon Sanderson. They're very different things, right? So just saying fantasy doesn't necessarily work. You might have a lot of those people that are looking for a Sarah Ma, and instead you get, a Scott Palmer. Which,
I like the romantasy in your book, Scott. It was lovely.
Thanks.
It's a really good.
It's all just the hero's journey, guys. We got to stop kidding ourselves. It's just the Odyssey over and over again, and we love it.
That's right, and
that's why we keep writing it.
Exactly, and that's exactly to Ryan's point too. Of it's just take everything. If you want to, the most important thing is a good story, right? And if you're using other things that you love as a person, you're going to have that passion leaking into your writing, and the passion in your writing is so much more important than anything else, I think.
There's also a concept of understanding the key things make your story what it is and what readers love. So like what I was saying, and I got a lot of readers over from Romantasy with Fourth Wing. It's about understanding that, taking the time to go, do you know what it is? It's the depth of characterization that you find in romance. So like, people like to shit on romance, but like the reality is, when I say people, I mean people who think they're better. But like, you know, romance authors are some of like the best character writers in the world, because when you look at what essentially has to be, they're not known for their plots for a reason, because they're meant to have a happy ever after. That's part of the tenet of a romance. You know, if it's not, it kind of turns to a mildly different genre. It could be like a tragedy, or it could be something else. But the general romance is that you're meant to have a happy ever after. And so they can be mildly cookie cutter in plot, but they're not writing them for the plot. Their characterization is so deep, and the emotional tension that you're looking for is a huge part of the romance genre. And if you don't understand that and you try to write a romance, you're going to write a very fucking bad romance. And it's also understanding that can be why those romance readers can end up really enjoying your story once they get past the barrier of this is fantasy. Because it depends what countries you're raised in as well. Like, a lot of women I knew, a lot of girls I knew were told that fantasy wasn't for girls when they were younger. And it's only when they get older and they realize, that was all a bunch of shit. And they realize, you know what, fantasy is amazing. And even Amy, like my wife, like, she's like, fantasy's not really my genre. Like, I don't really read that. And then now she's asking me why she doesn't have a copy of book 4. So, you know, but that's part of the thing you have to push past. But it's about understanding that, like, those pieces of your book, about what is important, the things that you're fixating on, the things that you're really trying to push and build. You know, what are the important parts of that book that make your book unique, or not even unique, but make it what the readers love.
Yeah, there's like an X factor. I heard this in a great masterclass from N.K. Jemisin. There's every fantasy world has to have an X factor, whatever that is. Like, I believe yours is probably dragons, Ryan. Pretty obvious. There's obviously there's many, but there's always something that is a broad kind of, this is what my world represents.
See, for me, interesting enough, I don't think mine would be dragons. So like, dragons are dragons. Dragons are great. I love dragons. But one of the key things that I wanted to dig into that I didn't see a lot of in fantasy books. I thought we were in like a cavern. That was cool. But something that I haven't seen a lot of, especially classic fantasy, so the style of fantasy that I'm writing, I haven't seen the really deep emotions when you're diving into the heart of characters and the emotion of characters, and the interactions between them. And also, like, one thing that I kind of is a big thing for me is like the concept of mental health and support and being there for each other, and that kind of depth of characterization on that aspect is something that I really like writing in my books. And from feedback that I've gotten and what readers have said, is a major part of what makes the books unique, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
Ah, fuck you. You know what?
He was in Patrick's as well.
Mike. Fuck Lonesome Dove.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question too.
That was a
So sorry about that, guys. I'm at the office and someone decided to ride their motorcycle just like in a loop around the offices, and then do a huge burnout and then leave, which is the most Australian thing that could have ever happened.
That person's so cool.
Yeah, right? I almost went out to ask about the motorcycle.
It's only more Australian if a crocodile is driving the car. That's the only way.
That's only where Callum's from. That's only the NT.
Yeah.
Andrew, someone just popped a super chat or something in.
Yeah, I'll pop that up now. And I realized that we are closing in on 2 hours, and I don't want to steal too much of your time, Ryan. So I will call out if anyone wants to drop in any questions. But I know you might want to answer this one with the physical copies.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
I feel like that's for you. I feel like that's for you because it's like it's a thing on your page.
Well, Safina, you can tell us. Is that for Ryan's new book?
Well, you can both answer, I guess. Like,
yeah,
find out now, guys.
That's true.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And Andrew's Black Mantle will be out this month.
Mine should be out now. The problem is Oh, there we go. It's for Ryan. I thought it was for Ryan.
Sorry.
Ryan's a cool kid on the chat, so I had to have been.
Yeah, I hope it's only in about 2 weeks, maybe a tiny bit longer, but like that's the plan. It's annoying just with the way things have worked, with the way deadlines have been, because I have to wait for the proofread to come back before I can then send it to the formatter to get the format ready, then I send it to the cover designer to design the cover to the format, and then put it on. So it takes a little bit longer, which is annoying. And if it was I think that's the thing that gets missed sometimes. It's not a case of like I could bring the paper back earlier. All I'd be doing is delaying anyone who reads on an ebook getting it. So it makes sense to go to them now. But hopefully the next one will be all formats at the same time. Thank God.
I am always confused, and you use Ingram Spark, don't you, for physical copies?
Yeah.
I don't understand why you upload the files and they have like 3 to 5 days of processing time just to give you a
so
file
long.
to check.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing in that time? I'm so confused. I don't understand.
It's a pain in the balls.
It's
a pain in the balls. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we have to check and review this. I was like, I know you didn't look at it.
Yeah.
And then they just give you a PDF back of
Right.
what you said then. You're like, great. Yeah, looks good to me.
As I changed
With a watermark on it.
one letter, and you've had this in processing for a week. Like it's.
And then you get
It's
the
a
proof,
nightmare.
you got to change the proof, and then the whole thing restarts. It's a vicious
Yeah.
cycle.
And then if you delay for like a day, they're like, it's another $100 to send it back to us. What?
Yeah.
But their book quality is amazing, so I guess
It's worth it for the flop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it for the flop.
Yeah.
I would definitely, especially if I was UK based, I'd definitely be looking into is it Book Vault? They've done a lot of stuff recently. I like their quality.
I can speak to
coming to
Book
Australia
Vault
later this year.
specifically for anyone who's looking at that. So they have recently done my Kickstarter, I don't know if it's barely visible, but they've done a lot of good bespoke stuff. However, so thank you, Book Vault. But they are also they're in the growth stage. So
I've heard the US ones can be a little bit, because you print to the US or to the UK?
I printed the UK and then shipped it to Canada because UK is the UK printer is the only one that's doing things like sprayed edges and front papers and end papers and stuff. So if you are interested in Book Vault or special editions, just a PSA for everyone, they're growing, like they're just releasing some of this stuff. So there's delays, there can be some challenges, but the overall quality is quite high. But just a PSA.
I would say the reality is, as like from experiencing these things at different parts of the industry and a different scale, that's all he does. He's only here to say that word, and then he just vanishes into the fucking ether, and I don't hear from him for like a week.
That's him till their next live.
He's like some weird like comedy horror villain who just comes out from behind the curtains and just like. Whoa.
Yeah.
In the chat.
But one thing you realize is, as you get to the larger printers and other stuff like that this is not unique. So like they might be in a growth stage, but that means nothing. So like we've had stuff, people are like, why is there like special editions for like a Darkness and Light and stuff, right? And people are like, why is it so delayed? I was like, do you want to know why it's delayed? Because like a Blood and Fire. And he was like, why is it delayed? It's meant to launch in December or January. I was like, because they said, sweet, it's going to print. And then 8 weeks later, messaged us and says, there was a problem with a piece of artwork when he went to print. So didn't you go to print 8 weeks ago? Yeah. Why didn't you tell us? I don't know. I think we just lost 2 months. Just go.
Okay, then right? I'm glad to know I'm not.
But then you have to fix it. Yeah. And then the same thing happens. All of a sudden, it's fucking June. And you're like, guys, what is going on here? How can you be this inefficient? How is it possible? And I think, until you experience that, it's really hard. A lot of people I know who've kind of come into it and seen it for the first time, they're like, man, this is so inefficient. It's completely unacceptable. And I was like, I agree with you. But it's not going to change. This is every fucking printer. They are all batshit crazy. And it's the weirdest experience I've ever had. I've never dealt in any industry where someone can come back to you like 2 months later with no reason or excuse.
Did they ever come back with a
deal with it, bro?
Did they ever come back with white paper? I know how much you love white paper in your books.
This is the thing. So they made fun of me because when we were over in Worldcon, I was saying it's a big thing. So like printing on white paper is bad. Okay,
it's disgusting.
But even from a general perspective, it goes. This is the level. This is why it was funny, because talking about like how obsessive I am about these things and the level that I researched before getting into it is the concept that like white paper is used for educational academic texts because it helps the text stand out from the background and it helps you focus, right? But when you're reading larger books, it is a huge strain on your eyes, like massively, to the point that it will very much make people put the book down. And so it's just not for fiction. No, like it's not for fiction, all right? But a lot of people who don't know that, because in fairness, if you're a new author and you come in and all of a sudden you have to choose between white and cream paper, you're like, what the fuck does it matter? You know, which one is cheaper? But there is a big difference, especially if you write longer fantasy books, because you want people to sit there. People can't sit there for like 4 hours and just read that contrast. It just messes with your eyes, like it gives you headaches.
You're not alone.
I don't hate white pages. I just hate them in fiction. Okay,
yeah, for a science textbook. Then
genuinely, if it was twice as much, I would still get Groundwood. Like, if it cost me, if it made me lose money, I would still print on it because it's worth it. It's just
beautiful.
White is.
This is something I think you guys actually really appreciate. I'm currently in the process of working with someone who's doing a full language construction for the language that I have in my book. So I do the language in the books, but this guy understands it at a very deep level. And he is going through full things with thousands of years of history of dialect changes and conjugations and complex sentences and everything, like a full, like the way Dothraki is done in Game of Thrones kind of thing. And when I do that, I might put that on white paper when I put it out as a dictionary. Because then it'll be easier.
As intended, as it should be.
Yeah.
We also have another question from Benjamin. I assume they mean the hard.
I'm assuming
do you mean the new ones?
Actually, yeah.
Yes,
definitely need clarification on that. I need clarification on that because it depends. There is many different things this could be, because it's real hard. Like I find even now, I have no. Someone asked on my Discord the other day about like when the hardbacks paperbacks are coming out for Empires and Dust, right? And I hadn't answered it, and I eventually tagged me again and I responded to it and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm getting asked this like legitimately like 30 to 40 times a day. And I will like put a post on Instagram that will be talking about the launch for the ebook, and in brackets I will say hardback and paperback coming in like 2 weeks, audio in the 30th of September, and the comment will be, when's audio? When's the hardback?
Oh my goodness.
When's the paperback? And then I'll get all the messages. I'm like, guys, give me some space.
So when is the hardback coming? No.
There we go. So I would say keep your eyes open in May, and we're going to be saying a few things about it. And then the plan will be they've gotten the whole series getting full cover redesigns by Tom Roberts, who did Godkiller by Hannah Kaner and did all Mark Lawrence's new covers for the book that wouldn't burn.
Can't wait to see that.
And I've gotten the chance to art direct them all with Tom, and they are genuinely stunning. So they're going to be re-releasing, republishing in hardback. I think the plan is around March 2026, so like a year from now. But the pre-orders will be up a lot sooner, and then we're looking at launching the main books every 6 months with the novellas in between. So that's the general thing, and we haven't done a big thing on it, but it's not like hidden away. But there'll be more of an announcement in May, I believe, is the plan.
Nice.
So super fun. I can't wait either, because they've decided to do. Oh god, they've decided to do. Hi Leslie. A really cool thing, which is all of the first editions are going to be sewn binding, acid-free paper, all the full specs, so that the first edition actually matters. Going in and getting a first edition means you are getting a higher quality book, not just a book that was printed first. So it's gonna be really cool. I'm looking forward to doing it. We're working on trying to find a way to emboss and deboss dragon scales on the spine, which would be really cool.
Hell yeah!
So awesome. that should be very cool.
Yeah. Also, sewn binding for a book that large is great too, because
because it won't fall apart. Well, Blood and Fire isn't that large, so that's okay. But for the other ones, it's going to be absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
100%. I'm not sure how the paperbacks will function.
I've just ticked over to the 29th, so that means it's only 2 days now, right? Until release of the new book.
Yeah. This is like the most... Amazon do the most annoying thing in the whole world. with the whole like you have to upload the files like days and days and days before, because then you sit there and I'm like, come on. And it's so annoying because I actually had the option to move the launch forward one day, but it was really unclear because it then said that to do that, it gave me the option to do it, and then it goes files must be uploaded, and it was like a day before the current day, and Amazon are so fucking weird that I was worried that if I did it, they just cancel all my pre-orders. So I was like, no, I'm not gonna. Like, they're a strange group. But I also go ahead.
My proofreader was a little bit late, so right to the line, I had a couple things like in the background that just offset everything, and I was looking at that Amazon Day approach, and I was like, "Oh, come on!" There was so many nights I was just working so late to get the proofread done. But once you've read it so many times, that last read just to clean things up is just the worst.
I would rather have dragged my balls across a mile of broken glass than go through everything that I just did. It is horrific. And when it's like nearly 500,000 words, it's
how do you
it's a long fucking read.
Yeah,
you get a really good proofreader.
So long. Yeah.
What I found really useful, maybe other people find it useful too, is I did like text to speech and listen to it, and because you will immediately hear if there's a spelling mistake and one extra word.
I on the stage before I send it to my proofreader, I will always read through it orally. So I'll always read it out to myself, which is the main thing. And even then, you still miss it. Like I think people kind of forget that. It's what happens sometimes. There was a typo in here. I was like, yeah, it's like a nearly 500,000 word book. There's going to be a few, and like your brain fills them in. Like that's legitimately like, and it's an issue. It's a reason why proofreaders are so important. I believe they're incredibly important for multiple reasons. One being the fact that I do not want people coming to me trying to explain that, because my book is indie, that a lower process goes through, or it goes through a lower graded process, that I'm not doing the things that trad publishing houses do, and that I'm producing a lower quality book. And so I'm kind of fixated on that. But at the same time, like, you just can't. Like, if you've read this book so many times, your brain literally fills in missing words. Like that's a thing. It's a proven thing. You will just fill in words that aren't there because your brain is like, I know it was meant to be there. I won't tell you. Like you need someone else's eyes to go through that 100%, especially in books this large. This is fucking insane.
I still love the story of when you finished Of War and Ruin, but you didn't tell your editor, Sarah, how long it was. You just kind of sent it in bits. You're like, oh, just edit this little bit, and I did this little bit. And Sarah's like, yeah, okay, sure. And doesn't realize it's like over 400,000 words.
It's a damn long book.
Yeah. Did you give her a heads up with the new one, or did you?
At this one, I'm actually have a different editor at the minute, and she did have a heads up. She needed a heads up to try and meet the deadlines.
To make it,
we need to know what it was. It was very conscious. Like, this is a long fucking book. I'm on tight deadlines. Can you do this? Because otherwise, I'm screwed. Because with the baby, with Ella, she was born with a fractured leg as well. So there was a lot of like that. I lost about a month worth of writing because I couldn't. I had stuff to do, and so the deadlines ended up like way tighter than they were meant to be. And now I'm going to take a couple of weeks off because I need to breathe and maybe like play PlayStation or something.
I remember. And look after your newborn child so your wife can sleep, obviously.
Oh yeah, actually, at the minute she sleeps a lot more than I do, because I'm usually up until about 4. And she does. Yeah, no, Amy, that's kind of the thing. It's about having the partner. Like, Amy's there and she's going, right, look, at the minute, I'm on maternity leave. You're doing this. You're going to work like crazy. This will hopefully then help us to, be safe and secure for the next while. And then you're finished. Take a break off, and then we can kind of balance it out again. And so it always happens. I think, like, but in a relationship, I think it's never 50-50. Like, it's always like sometimes you have to give 60, the person gives 40, 80, 20, and it'll keep flipping back and forth. And like when it comes up to lunch, it always ends up going that other way. Like Amy's always like, I'm going to do fucking 80. And she's like bringing me in a coffee when I get up at 7 in the morning after going to bed at 3. And I'm just like, I love you. Thank you so much. Keep me caffeinated.
But when you've only got 30% and you give that 30%, you're actually giving 100.
Yeah. No. That's right. 100% is what I was going to say. 100%. And that's it. And I think neither of us prepared for having a baby and how crazy it is. And that's why I have, like, when I think it was Scott who was saying, or Sam, that there's the post on Instagram and stuff. with the baby on my chest, because that's it. Like Amy wasn't sleeping and I needed to work. So I would just be out in the lounge with the baby on my chest from like 11 p.m. to like 4 in the morning working. And then we'd switch over. Amy would then wake up before, and then she'd see if the baby would sleep on her chest, because if she doesn't sleep when a baby sleeps on your chest, if you're asleep too, because anytime that happened, I would have to put the monitor on and I would watch them to make sure that they were safe.
Yeah.
But Amy's you're not actually sleeping. Like, so she's like sleeping, but it's like, if you imagine your sleep is working at 60% efficiency.
I absolutely amazed again, like knowing that your daughter was born so close to your deadlines, that you even have the ability to make words on a page. Like it's next to impossible to even like go to the bathroom when you have.
I don't even remember the first 6 months of my daughter's life. I was
It's a hate.
She was small and then she was bigger.
No, my brain's blocked it out. It's traumatic. She didn't sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time.
I think it's been the screaming for me, because like she was born with a fractured leg and she had a bit of colic and stuff. And she's sleeping well at night, but during the day, not really. So like during the day, I'm still working full time, so I have to be in here and I'm working, but I can go out and help and do little bits, which is great. Not everyone has that opportunity. But then when I'm writing, it's like you're writing and it's just and I'm just like, I can't connect consciously.
You're like, I know this is the worst thing that's ever happened to you because you've been alive for 3 minutes, but can you?
Technically, this is the worst day of your life.
Literally,
Noise cancelling have a frequency, like active noise cancelling. Babies scream at a frequency that goes straight through it. And it's
and like that's what it's designed to do, so that you as a parent don't let them die in the wild or whatever. Like it's meant to pierce through your soul.
She's built with like an elevation sensor in her, like so. Like if you like hold her up in the air, she just stops crying. And you bring her to
That's right. Workout.
My daughter is the exact same way. She would like scream the second you're standing with her. She's like, "All right," and I'm like, "Okay, I guess none of us will ever sit again." That's
I
used to do laps of my kitchen, holding my kid up like Mufasa, like Rafiki. Sorry, just around.
Now I just play Aretha Franklin and she smiles.
Yeah, excellent.
But it lasts for about 3 minutes.
As long as the song goes on, then.
Oh, my life.
There is a question in the chat. It looks like someone's really eager to learn the safety of a character. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to answer that.
I think I can like, it depends what you mean. So like, is he safe going into book 4? Like, is he alive at the start of book 4? I think he was alive at the end of book 3. So I think I can say yes.
Oh yeah, do one that's a spoiler, but we won't know until we read it.
Yeah, and I'm just I'm going to be ambiguous. Things happen. And people, there's points where like stuff. It
actually happens.
That's what the blurb says.
That's how I feel. Well, actually, up until yesterday, up until 3 minutes before the book locked for launch, it had like one line as a blurb. But
just read it.
I literally had the countdown in front of me going down 3 minutes. I was like blurb, 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 because we decided to go out for breakfast beforehand, because I was like, fuck it. Then we came back and I said I'd do it, but
well, I don't want to steal any more of anyone's time. I know Scott had things as well on, so I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming on and chatting. This was really, really exciting, and I know we had someone who just finished The Exile, and now I've lost the comment because, of course, I have.
I think it was the same. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, and just found it. Well,
Cool
now
comment.
you have.
Hey.
Now you know.
Cool.
and that's how the internet works.
And that's why interviews are important.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. But yeah, huge congratulations, Ryan, on the book that's coming out in 3
Congrats,
days
Ryan.
now. 3 days.
Congratulations,
I don't know.
Ryan. It's been an epic journey.
I'm so ready to just
Sleep.
have anything more than 3 to 4 hours sleep.
Well, good luck. That regardless of the book, you got a baby.
So you got to tag team this shit. Like we work together. I get 4 hours, she gets 4 hours, and I get 2, she gets 2. We'll balance it. It'll work, won't it? Someone please tell me it'll work.
But you can't keep score. If you accidentally only get 3, then you can't get 5 back. You have to let that 1 hour go. You can't hold it in your heart because you'll fester.
children.
And then
Nobody
they're
prepares you for it.
and they're
Nobody
colouring
prepares you for
in
this stuff.
quietly in their room and not bothering you. It's wonderful.
And then they're like 2 weeks later, and they're just breaking shit. Or I don't even know. Like it's just all I've heard is this is the roller coaster that never ends.
I'll tell you, it reaches a point though. Like I'm at the point where my daughter's starting to have conversations with me, and it is unreal. Like it is at the point where it's like that's why I put up with everything. Because
you're also lucky though, because you're Canadian. If you have an Australian kid when they're having the conversation, like "fuck you, Daddy."
Yeah. Well, we've got Bluey over here, Ryan, so we're well versed in Bluey's date on Australian.
Clutch my pearls. I feel the need to put. My daughter has never said "fuck you" to me.
To you,
because I raised her correctly.
Quickly defend all of us.
However, I have told her if anyone is mean to her on the playground, she's allowed to punch them, and I'll deal with it.
Well, everybody
That's
knows
great
that
advice.
wild physical violence is definitely more acceptable than cursing.
Absolutely. Don't throw the first punch, but throw the last one. That's what I said.
Yeah,
I've had that. I've had a reader, many readers actually, almost always, not almost, they are categorically always American. It's just the way it works. But it is. It's not that all Americans do that, but it's just that it's only ever from America that it happens. People are like, oh, I need you to stop your cursing in your books. I can't recommend it to my 16-year-old. I was like, you have no issue with the disemboweling, beheading, murdering, slaughter, torture. That's all fine. But the word fuck is where you draw the line. I think we're sending the wrong message to our kids here. I think, it's important. Expletives have a use in the English language. And if my mom said, you're a little dickhead, and I said, go fuck yourself, and I meant it in a playful way, it's fine. If I said it with any malice, I would be kicked out of the house.
Yeah.
Like at all. Like the meaning behind the word is more important than the letters that compose the word.
Yeah.
I think it just sounds angry in an American accent. Maybe that's why.
I think that's because they've never been raised to say it politely.
You're talking about like
They don't use it like a positive thing like we do.
Australians, Irish, and Scottish have been raised to say fuck politely. Like
Yeah.
that's how it works.
Fucking oath. Like,
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
The
like when you say
first time that
someone's
my
a
dad
sick
was
cunt,
called a
like
good
that's
cunt.
just
Yeah, I was
a
gonna-
nice thing
yeah.
to say about someone.
I had an Australian comment on my book, leave a review saying, I'm giving this book 5 stars because of the use of cunt.
That was me.
Was that
See, this is where that's
It's
one word.
gonna be now.
That's one word I will not put in my books because I have used very, very scientific reasoning to say that books are fine, but if I use that word in my book, too many Americans will drop off. I've just had to go. I want to use it. There's definitely a couple of characters who would use it, but I can't. I'm just gonna draw the line in the sand here, and I'm gonna come up with as many other random shit that I can say as humanly possible. But for some reason, that word is just it's an American no-fly zone. So I just kind of go, do you know what? George R. Martin gets away with it because it's so big, like his series. But yeah, I love the word personally. I think if it's used correctly, it has the right amount of poetic nature with a good amount of punch.
That's a
It's
great way to
interesting
describe that word.
linguistically, though, how it is changing in meaning. Like people are using it to mean that you're fashion forward, or that something is cool. Like oh, that's such a cunty outfit.
Wait,
I am. This is me.
That's
Yeah,
different. That doesn't mean how it's meant to mean. You know what I mean?
I think if somebody walked past me and said, "Man, he's dressed like a cunt," I don't.
You're like, thank you. This is new.
Yes, surf cunt queen.
I've not heard that one.
Look, you're not chronically online. Is what
I am.
I'm saying.
Your daughter. You said you have a daughter, do you?
Yes, she's 5.
Yeah. Like your daughter's gonna walk through the room. It's like, oh, that's such a cunty outfit, man.
No, she's gonna come home like, Mom, they said I didn't surf cunt at school, and I'm like, you have a uniform. What?
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Australia is a country.
it is. There it is.
Yeah, I don't.
One of the
there's nothing
countries of
else
all
to really-
time.
Yeah.
One of them. Yeah.
Wow.
The
Okay.
cuntiest.
I don't know how to recover from that, to be totally honest. Yep.
Okay,
You're
well,
ready to.
And that's what we'll end it
on
on.
that note, okay.
Andrew's like, guys, it's midnight. Can I please?
No, but yes, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you everyone for chatting apart from that end section,
Sorry.
I can't.
I
tune
think it was
so, you know.
fantastic, and this is what lives are for.
He's got demonetized on
I just I learned something new.
Oh,
I think
No,
we're
because
doing-
it's a positive thing. Okay, it's a positive thing.
True.
You know?
it's true. Okay. Well,
Or yes, maybe.
Thanks,
Like, I don't know.
okay.
Oh,
Well,
man.
thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Ryan.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and
Right.
watching as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck with the book, Ryan.
You know that we don't disappear when the